Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your president speaking, Samuel Ronan, and today is a new week of streaming. Yes, we made it through another weekend. Of course, this weekend has been filled with an extreme amount of atrocities. Between ICE murdering Alex Pretty, between the administration hiding it and trying to cover it up and painting him as some sort of terrorist, an armed thug, and actually actively calling for the common sense that if you bring a firearm to a protest, you deserve to get murdered in cold blood. Meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse exists. So we've definitely a lot to cover today. Some of it may be repetitive. I know I have been watching the Alex Pretty videos over and over and over again, so this, I feel like, is just days on end of the same thing. But for many of you that might be joining us today or watching this in the future, you might not have been aware, and it is what it is. So there is definitely good news with the sheer amount of backlash that is now being leveraged against ICE, the agency as a whole, the Department of Homeland Security and everyone involved, as well as this regime. There does seem to finally be some cracks forming in the GOP where before it was a solid red MAGA swath. It does seem as though it is beginning to break in its fragility, right? Typically, if something is very hard, it's very brittle, right? And if you strike it correctly, it'll start to fracture, break, and crumble to dust. So with that being said, that's what we're going to be getting into. A lot of our content will be coming from Democracy Now!, Breaking Points, and I guess a little bit of NBC, but for the most part, we're going to try and get through this playlist today. And hopefully I won't completely lose my marbles, and we'll get there. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the stream. And yeah, let's get right to it.
As protests continue in response to the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis, a federal judge in Minnesota heard arguments Monday in a lawsuit filed by state officials alongside the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul to halt Trump's unprecedented deployment of thousands of federal immigration agents to the state. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who was in court yesterday.
Like, what the hell? Anyway, refresh the playlist. Okay.
As protests continue in response, and whether it's militarization of Minnesota.
Okay, good. So here's the problem with some of the reporting that we're hearing, and I'm guilty of it myself because I was under the mistaken impression that this was unprecedented behavior as well. And maybe it's unprecedented in the sense that ICE wasn't an agency that existed before. But our country absolutely does have a history, a very long history of sending police forces, hired thugs, the military, the active duty military, not even just the National Guard. There is a lot of history going as far back as, well, when the Insurrection Act was itself formed, right? But one of the more notable times was during the years after the Page Act was passed in the late 1800s, which began the discrimination against migrant laborers. And then when you had the Chinese Exclusion Act, we created our first detention centers, deportation centers, where we rounded up people in some of the most heinous living conditions possible and then sent them back on a boat with even more heinous conditions believable. And that was all due to local city police and military support and some hired thugs to get along with it. If not local roving gangs such as, the Irish Working Party. So to say that it is unprecedented is historically inaccurate, but it could be also accurate insofar as this level, this scale, and the agency involved itself might be unprecedented. But the actions the behavior, the destructive nature of it, not so much, unfortunately.
Is intended to, quote, punish plaintiffs for adopting sanctuary laws and policies, unquote. Attorney General Ellison spoke after the hours-long court hearing.
This is the single largest deployment of immigration officers in one place at one time, in a state that is not even in the top of immigration. What justifies this disproportionate flood? Nothing legitimate, but the president has been clear. Retribution.
In a separate hearing later in the day, a Trump administration lawyer assured a Minneapolis federal judge that body camera footage of Alex Pretty's fatal shooting was being preserved by federal investigators. The lawyer did not specify whether the body cam footage would be shared with Minnesota authorities and did not confirm how many agents were wearing cameras at the time of the shooting.
Which is exactly the point, right? The feds are going to investigate themselves and find that they've done nothing wrong, and they're also not going to share that footage with state and local agencies. I mean, it's already a cover-up because Bovino, who's already on the way out, said he's going to cover it up. Kristi Noem said she was going to cover it up. Trump is even saying that it would endanger himself and his family if this information were to get out there. So, like, the cover-up is literally in this office. It's happening in this friggin' office, the Oval Office, and trickling its way down to Minneapolis. So, I mean, yeah, sure, this is going to be a normal, clear-cut investigation.
Shooting. Minnesota state officials are urging the court to extend an emergency order prohibiting the Trump administration from destroying or altering evidence after Border Patrol agents.
Which is a crazy. I think we covered this, last week. The courts actually had to pass a ruling telling the Trump administration that you cannot alter evidence, which one would assume is already the law. Like, hello, Razor. I just noticed you're in the chat. Sorry, didn't mean to forget you there, but why does the court have to go out of its way banning the federal government or any agency from tampering with evidence? That is literally against the law. Like, is that not the very basis of law, that you cannot tamper with evidence, or that you shouldn't tamper with evidence? Like, that's just kind of nuts that a judge had to go out of their way to say that.
And shot Pretty dead. The federal government has blocked local investigators from reviewing the evidence, just like it did after the fatal shooting of Renee Good.
But see, there's your evidence. Like, that video footage shows that the man gets murdered by whichever one of those agents was pulling the trigger. That's your evidence. Like, you don't, like, what? The smoking gun? Like, that's your smoking gun. That is literally a smoking gun. And that video is viral. And there are, like, 20 different vantage points now. So, as far as prosecution goes, like, this should be hook, line, and sinker. I'm not really understanding what the holdup here is.
More we go to Minneapolis, where we're joined by Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Oh, wow. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Attorney General. If you could start off by talking about...
Glad to be with you, Amy. How are you?
It's great to have you with us. Can you talk about what happened in court yesterday and respond to... We had you on just on Friday. Now, another killing of a Minnesotan. Can you respond to that killing and what you demanded in court on Monday morning?
Well, first of all, Alex Pretty was an amazing man. He was an ICU nurse at the Veterans Administration Hospital. He devoted his life to caring for people who defended America. And yet he was shot down in the streets of Minneapolis, also trying to defend a woman who was thrown to the ground by ICE agents. So I took it very personally when the Secretary of Homeland Security defamed him, as did Bovino and others. And so let me just say that. I'll also note that in Monday, our court hearing in the morning, our 9 a.m. court hearing, was really about saying that as Minnesota has the right to devote Minnesota resources to Minnesota activities, and we are not obligated to operate as extensions of ICE, then the federal government and ICE cannot then say, well, if you won't do what we want you to do, we're going to inundate your state with 4,000 agents. We're going to raise all kind of problems and abuse people and do shootings, unauthorized entries into homes, like massive abuses. And so.
Okay, so Keith Ellison, folks, he ran for DNC chair the same time I ran for DNC chair. He ended up being co-chair for a while and then had to step down due to scandal. Why am I bringing this up? Because as the Attorney General, what he says carries weight. How he says it carries weight. And he is literally just political gymnasticsing around the fact that these aren't abuses. These aren't abuses. Murdering somebody in the street isn't an abuse. Unlawful entry into somebody's home is not an abuse, right? Terrorizing a city is not an abuse. Those aren't abuses. Abuses is, they touched me, so I'm going to charge them with assault. Granted, I would still argue that that's not an abuse. Abuse of your power. What would be a good abuse of power? Getting away with, like, well, no, because they're in charge of their own parking and speed enforcement and all that. What would be a good thing to label as an... trying to tell, like, a coffee person that, like, hey, even if you don't offer a discount, I'm a cop and you should discount my coffee, right? That's an abuse. What he's talking about, murdering people in cold blood in broad daylight in our American cities, doesn't matter who was murdered. We have 9 dead so far in 2026, and it's not even the end of January, okay? So murdering people in broad daylight, that is a crime. That is outright a crime. Illegal entry into somebody's home, that's a violation of the 4th Amendment, which is a crime. That's not an abuse. That is a crime, and a constitutional crime at that. Okay? And then terrorizing cities, following civilians, going to their homes and then threatening them. I know where you and your family live. I know who and your family are. That's intimidation and stalking, which are also crimes. So the fact that he's calling these things abuses is a disingenuous, like, complete disregard to the material facts, which is that every single activity that has been conducted by ICE is criminal. They are a criminal institution, and because they are driven by political motivation, they are a terrorist organization. A domestic terrorist organization, for that matter. So, let's be clear. Let's see. All this is for the benefit of the American people. Let us destroy America. Yeah. It makes sense that Trump, who is of German origin, would expel immigrants while he himself is an immigrant. That makes perfect sense. The same story in a different way. Murdering someone on the street just because you're an ICE employee is a crime because the law wasn't made for one group. It's for justice, right? So, all of which is to say, the point that I'm making here is phrasing matters, words matter, and calling them abuses is really just not it. That's just not it. I'm going to give him a chance to speak, but...
Essentially what we're saying is the federal government cannot coerce us into doing it their way. Federalism and the structure of this country, the balance between state and federal power, cannot be maintained as is constitutionally required under the 10th Amendment if the federal government can try to bully a state out of.
So he does bring up the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, interestingly enough, yet omits to utilize the Fourth Amendment and highlighting that they're breaking into people. So you are familiar with the Constitution. I mean, wow. Impressive, really.
What it could never get in a courtroom because they don't have the right. So that's what the argument was all about. The judge was very thoughtful, very smart, asked the right questions, and I'm confident that we'll get a good outcome. And if we don't, then we're going to continue to fight on.
I'm still so confused right now. So we're arguing in court that the federal government is invading the state of Minnesota, terrorizing her people, murdering her people in the streets. And again, it doesn't matter that it was white people that got murdered in Minnesota versus immigrants or versus the black man where was it? Was it Philly? No, I think it was Illinois. I don't actually remember. That's unfortunate. It's hard to keep up with where people have been murdered by ICE because there's been 9 so far, and a lot of them have been covered up. Suffice to say, you have the federal government and I guess the Attorney General both arguing in court. The federal government saying we do have the right to invade states and terrorize people. And the state of Minnesota saying, no, you don't have that right. We have the right to not deal with that. And then the judge presiding over these arguments is not immediately arresting the federal government representative as for literally undermining the Constitution. But he was instead asking the right questions. So what were those questions? Federal government, are you in fact aware that forced entry into somebody's home is in violation of the Fourth Amendment? No, Your Honor, we weren't aware of that. Okay, no, okay, that's fair. We just need to set some guidelines, right? Some boundaries, a foundational principle where we're at. Okay. Do you know that it's illegal to murder somebody? Honestly, that's news to me, Judge. So, no, wasn't aware you can't murder. Oh, excellent. All right, now we're getting somewhere. You didn't know that you can't illegally break into people's homes. Fair enough. And you weren't aware that murder was illegal. Who'd have thought that? All right, let's move on to you, Keith Ellison. Are you aware? What were these questions? And why is our judicial process so absolutely stupid and asinine that this farce takes place? Again, there doesn't need to be hearings about whether or not the federal government has the right to murder people, because it should be clearly understood that they don't. And I insist that the director of ICE in Minnesota comes to my courtroom after being ignored 38 times and counting. Bruh, if I, Samuel Ronan, did not show up to a court-mandated hearing, I would have jackboots kicking down the door of my house, the White House, and dragging my ass to the court, and then charging me for not showing up in the first place. So the federal Department of ICE can just straight up ignore court rulings and not a goddamn thing happens to them? I get jurisdictional prudence, right? Or precedence, right? Federal, state, local, but just because you're a federal agent doesn't make you above the law. Granted, of the national government, for one, but for two, the state law in which you're committing the crime. That's why federal agents do get charged at the state level for crimes, because they might get pardoned by the federal government, so they make sure that they get state charges so the federal government can't pardon them. So again, I'm really not understanding why is the judge not arresting this fucking clown and forcing his ass into the hearing and then charging him with contempt and every other thing under the book. Maybe I didn't go to law school, and I admit I didn't go to law school, and maybe that's why I might be missing something. But to me, that doesn't make any damn sense.
Attorney General Ellison, I wanted to ask you about the decision of the authorities there, the federal authorities, to transfer out of state the agents involved in that shooting. The responsibility of local authorities in Minneapolis to investigate this shooting, and how the transfer of these agents out of state affects that.
Right. And on top of everything else that's going on top of all the soapboxing I just did, the federal agents responsible for murdering a man in cold blood are being reassigned. They are being protected by the very agency that is committing the crime. When I was active duty, if I had murdered anybody, if I had disobeyed the rules of engagement at all, I would have been court-martialed, dishonorably discharged, and sent to Leavenworth, turning big rocks into small rocks, and those small rocks into even smaller rocks. So, if ICE is literally protecting their own staff who have committed murder in broad daylight and in 4K, then the entire fucking agency is complicit. Arrest them all. Charge them all with aiding and abetting murder. And interfering with an investigation, cover up, like conspiracy to like, I don't know how many different laws are being violated, but there's gotta be more than a few. And the entire agency is complicit. The entire agency.
Feels like a cover-up to me. I mean, here's the thing. And when we talk about the transfer of agents, let's put Bovino in that category as well. You know, one thing's certainly true. The state government has the right to criminally charge anyone, including a federal agent, who commits a crime in our state. That is
funny how I said that earlier, right? I'm being backed up and corroborated by the Attorney General.
It's not even in serious question. I know the vice president said otherwise. He's wrong, and he should correct the record because he's clearly wrong. But what the federal authorities seem to be doing in the 3 cases of shootings here in Minnesota is to say, yeah, we kind of know that you have the right to prosecute us. So what we're going to do is frustrate your capability of prosecuting us by grabbing evidence, by spiriting people away out of the state, by allowing our agents to wear masks so they're never accountable. This is the sort of tactic that they're using. I think that they're implicitly acknowledging our right to prosecute crimes, but they're saying, well, yeah, if you can, because we're going to mess with the evidence and everything else.
So charge the agency. This isn't rocket science. Charge them. Arrest every single ICE agent until one of them decides to fucking play ball.
Appears to be what's going on. When it comes to Bovino, I think that the federal government is spectacular.
And you know what, Anna? You're absolutely fucking right. Vance is an Ivy League trained lawyer. So he knows he's wrong. He's lying. He is spreading misinformation, which is an actual crime. It's an actual crime. He's also guilty for interfering in an investigation. He is literally obstructing justice. Arrest the vice president. Like, holy shit.
Particularly hypocritical. They brought him here because he had a reputation for brutality and harsh tactics. They brought Bovino here because he was known to be mean and violent and hateful and would make his members act that way. Now that the people of Minnesota have protested and raised the roof on his brutal tactics, now they move him out of the way and say, oh, he's gone now. Well, you know, I guess I'll say, you know, good riddance to Bovino, but the federal government doesn't get any kudos for moving him.
I also wanted to ask you about this letter that U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi sent
Right.
to your governor, Tim Walz, over the weekend, demanding 3 policy changes in exchange
Right.
for a rollback of the aggressive tactics. One of those was the
Right. Right. And that's the other bit, right? So, the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, is like, you know what? All right, fine. We hear you. We're being too aggressive, and your citizens don't like that. I mean, they're our citizens too, but, semantics. If you roll back these 3 provisions, policies, we'll stop terrorizing your city and your state. What the actual fuck? I wish Mayor Gunther would write me a letter saying he'll stop harassing me if I do X, Y, and Z. Motherfucker, I will sue you into the fucking ground. Like, that's like your boss saying, hey, I will stop making you do the work of 3 other people if you just get me coffee every morning out of pocket. Getting somebody coffee out of pocket is not, a horrible, intimidating thing, but it is the principle, right? It is the principle of the thing. So I don't, where the fuck does Pam Bondi get off saying, hey, I know we are committing crimes in your city and in your state, and if you want us to stop committing those crimes, i.e. terrorizing your city and your state, which is against, it is in and of itself a crime, we'll stop doing that somewhat. We're not going to leave, but we will stop being as much of a terrorist nuisance if you do these 3 things. Like, the fucking audacity. And again, the criminal behavior. And I know I'm a broken clock, but I just keep thinking of this quote by JFK. Those who make peaceful protest impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. So Pam Bondi, Trump, ICE, all these groups are condemning the protesters, making it harder and harder for protesters to function, are now ramping up violence against protesters, up to and including murdering them in cold blood, and then protecting the murderers by reassigning them out of state. There really are only so many options left that the American people have. Now, there's still always one peaceful solution that trumps every other activity that can be accomplished, and that's the general strike. But if you keep pushing people towards either violent revolution or general strike, you're going to find out which one people are towards. General strike is because we're uncomfortable, our economy is crumbling, our jobs are not supporting what we need, and the cost of living is going up, so we're going to strike to make that resolved, right? And it was a result after one person was killed. We chose a general strike, yeah? And if we general strike every Friday, or preferably every day, but and even those get met with water cannons, non-lethal rounds, and tear gas, well, you're then signaling that you want the hard way. So this strong arming and these brutal tactics of trying to subjugate people will backfire. It's not a question of if it'll backfire. It's a matter of when and how badly. Because when you have the National Guard deploy to protect police officers and ICE agents, presumably, because Walz did not order them to protect protesters, and then those National Guardsmen take it upon themselves to protect protesters, you're losing the fucking script, okay? And if police turn against ICE agents and take the side of protesters, which would be unprecedented, by the way. Cops have literally never taken the side of the protester. Not once in U.S. history have the enforcers ever taken the side of the protester, i.e. the oppressed. if you lose both police and the National Guard, and all you have is ICE, which are poorly trained cowards and thugs with a superiority complex, like, not only are those guys going to get massacred, but then your throat is going to be bared and your head's going to be on the chopping block. So you're going to lose the game if you keep doing brutal tactics while losing the people that you need to rely on to enforce them. Just pointing that out. I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for blood and revolution. I'm just stating the facts. The police are becoming more sympathetic with protesters day after day. The National Guard is becoming sympathetic to the people more and more every single day. That's probably true of active duty, but we don't quite know because, well, we're not interviewing active duty. And, of course, the general public's opinion is turning against ICE and the administration with every passing day. So, at first you came for the trans, and then you came for the immigrant, and then you came for black people, and then you came for me, and I was alone, right? Yeah, that's true, and that's currently happening. But it's also true that first you betrayed law enforcement, and then you betrayed the National Guard, and then you betrayed your people, and then when ICE was ripped limb from limb, there was no one left to protect you. So it goes both ways. I guess that's what I'm getting at here.
Demanding the Minnesota voter rolls. Your reaction to that, and why even raise that?
Well, it kind of tells the story. I think you know, Juan, one thing's for sure. She kind of said the quiet part out loud. This is clearly coercion. They're using armed paramilitaries en masse to get.
That's the closest thing to an aggressive stance I've heard him make his entire fucking career. Paramilitaries, which are illegal.
What they could never get in a courtroom. We're contesting all these things that were in her letter, including the voting roll issue, in court. We're in court on these things. We're saying, no, you don't have a right to those things. We will battle this in court. We're suing them. We are fighting them now in court. But the federal government is saying, oh, yeah? Well, what do you say to 4,000 men, heavily armed, aiming guns at your people wearing masks? What do you say to that? This is the fundamental essence of coercion. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of case law, Juan, where, if Congress were to pass a law encroaching on state authority, or if there was an executive order encroaching on a state authority, courts would clearly say, oh, you can't do that. But what about a gun in your face? How could that possibly be okay if a congressional statute or an executive court order could not intrude upon state prerogatives?
Which is, again, that's a threat. That is an actual threat, like a clear and present death threat with intent to commit murder. Like, that's this is conspiracy to commit mass murder and mass civil unrest, inciting chaos and fear, which are all crimes. So I'm really not understanding how these actions do not automatically trigger charges being levied against the perpetrators, in this case, Pam Bondi. Granted, it's from the state of Minnesota, and she's probably never going to go to Minnesota, but even at the Supreme Court level or in the federal court system, like, Pam Bondi threatened the entire state of Minnesota with terrorism. That should immediately trigger her arrest on the grounds of trying to instill fear and panic in a population. Incitement. It's incitement, is it not? Like, am I missing something here? It is. Incitement is the criminal act of instigating, promoting, or encouraging another person to commit a crime, such as violence or a riot. In the U.S., it is not protected by the First Amendment if the speech is intended to and likely to do produce imminent lawless action. Penalties vary by jurisdiction, but can include fines and imprisonment, as it is considered an inchoate offense, meaning the crime need not actually occur to be punishable. So again, she can be arrested and charged for the simple fact she's trying. This is, I mean, beyond the pale just really doesn't do it enough justice, I guess. This is clearly a criminal behavior. It is very clearly incitement. It's very clearly all these bad things that they are accusing the protesters of doing, and yet again, they are doing themselves. So I don't know, man. Okay. Oh, and we're wasting time in the courts, right? Everything goes back to the courts where nothing is really happening, and they have already shrugged off court rulings over and over again.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We are continuing our conversation with Georgetown University Law Center professor Stephen Vladeck, who's written a piece, co-authored a piece in the New York Times, "This May Be the Only Path to Accountability for the Minneapolis Shootings." I wanted to ask you about the Associated Press reporting that ICE is asserting federal immigration officers have the power to forcibly enter homes without a judicial warrant in what legal experts say is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. ICE made the sweeping claim in a secretive memo dated May 12th. Two whistleblowers shared the memo with Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal. Last week, Homeland Security's General Counsel, Jimmy Percival, wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal headlined "How the Deep State Thwarted ICE Administrative Warrants." In it, Percival claimed, quote, "If the police come to a home to make an arrest, police generally must obtain a judicial warrant before entering without permission. Illegal aliens, however, don't have the same rights as citizens. Under federal immigration law, officers may issue an administrative warrant, which means that the probable cause finding is made by an executive branch officer rather than a judicial officer." Again, that's a quote.
Which is, that is literally not true. And look, the Constitution, I never did rearrange these. Right there. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The right of the people. The people. Not the citizens. Not of the ruling class or of the voting bloc. The people. All people. Human beings. You can't supersede the Fourth Amendment with racist drivel. Now, granted, that doesn't change the fact that things like the Page Act and the Chinese Exclusion Act were things to exist in America and were later struck down. But the fact of the matter is, unconstitutional laws should never be in effect ever. And it doesn't matter if they get passed, they shouldn't be enforceable. They should be immediately removed. And the fact that that's not a thing that happens is insane. Which is why I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives, to try and bring an ounce of sanity back to our government, while there is still a government to, well, I hear you. There's probably, saying that there's a government to salvage is a pretty big stretch at this point. But, I mean, got to do something, right?
of General Counsel for Homeland Security, Percival. Professor Vladeck, your response to these claims made by Percival, and talk about the whole TikTok story.
Yeah, so Amy, I wrote a post for my newsletter, which is called One First, which is at stevevlodek.com yesterday, that provides a much longer response to the general counsel's claims. There are two basic assertions here that are both false. The first assertion that Percival made in his op-ed is that what he calls illegal aliens have fewer Fourth Amendment rights than other non-citizens and then U.S. citizens. Amy, that's just not true. The Supreme Court has never said that. There are a smattering of lower court decisions that have suggested other contexts and other rights where maybe non-citizens in general and undocumented immigrants in particular have less protection, but none of those cases are Fourth Amendment cases. So just from the get-go, this whole framing is incorrect. But there's also this really, I think, odious attempt to portray non-citizens who are subject to what's called a final order of removal as, quote, fugitives from justice, unquote. That's just not true. The way our immigration process works, there are countless tens of thousands of non-citizens who might receive a final order of removal, but who are allowed to remain at large until a date by which the government says you must report to us or leave the country voluntarily. Those folks aren't fugitives. There are limits on how long the government can detain non-citizens pending their removal before they have to be released. Those folks are not fugitives. And so what we're really seeing here is an effort to twist a handful of old cases that have recognized circumstances in which the government doesn't need a judicial warrant to enter a home into this sort of systemic view that as long as they're looking for, quote, illegal aliens, a term they don't define with any specificity, they can go into anyone's homes, Amy, including American citizens' homes, without a judicially signed warrant.
Wir suchen für die Juden und wir gehen in dein Haus und du kannst nichts dafür tun. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that was in German. Let me try that again. Zeig mir deine Papiere. Oh wait, that was still German. I'm sorry. Komm raus von deinem Haus. Wir kommen rein und suchen für Juden. Damn it. Still German. Damn. I'm just trying to think of ways that this doesn't sound like a fucking Nazi. Or the exact policy of Nazi Germany, of justifying the dehumanization and stripping of rights of the Jewish population, being able to forcibly enter into homes to search for said Jewish population, and then remove said Jewish population from homes without any sort of judicial justification beyond the fact that Jewish people no longer have rights. And that's what's being argued here by J.D. Vance and DHS and Trump, is that illegal immigrants don't have rights. They are less than human beings. They are called vermin all the fucking time. They are called subhuman all the fucking time. They are called criminals and thieves and everything else to dehumanize them in the eyes of the public. And that is the exact shit that America did in the 1800s against black people, Chinese immigrants, Irish. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Fuck, I meant the Nazis, who learned from America. I don't know how. I know that there are some people in this country who genuinely enjoy the pain and suffering of others that they feel are inferior to them. I know that. That's probably between 10 and 20% of the country. I say 20% because I also include Blue MAGA in that as well. Yes, Democrats. I am in fact talking to you. The vote blue no matter who. The fact that Obama deported a bunch of people and he never got anybody killed when there were deaths. There were deaths, but they were Hispanic. They were immigrants. They didn't matter to you because they were brown, right? Obama launched attacks on 7 different countries, murdering thousands of innocent civilians in foreign countries. But because he made the capital or the empire go down smooth, you know, you tend to gloss over that fact. So, no, the dehumanization and the feelings of superiority over others due to race or due to economic circumstance is definitely a feeling and thought shared between blue and red MAGA. So approximately a maximum of 20%, right? The top 10% of each leaning side. That being said, I don't know how most people can hear this rhetoric in the news and not be absolutely disgusted and filled with bile. Just absolutely wanting to vomit at the dehumanizing language being leveraged against human beings who have, in large part, done nothing wrong other than believe that the American dream was for them too. Because again, most of the people that ICE is going after aren't even undocumented, i.e. illegal. Most of the people that are here that ICE is going after have some sort of legal status. And guess what? Pending is still a legal status. So the actual amount of undocumented people in this country is not nearly as high or severe as this agency is making it out. And even then, it's not a crime. It's not a criminal violation. It's a civil one, like a fucking parking ticket. So, we're going to strip people of their basic human rights over a goddamn parking ticket and think we're the good guys and think that's the right and just thing to do? It's pretty abhorrent to me how many Americans in their thousands and in their tens of thousands and in their millions believe that they deserve this kind of treatment. Or at the very least that they do deserve to be deported and that they should have done things the right way. Motherfucker. Most of these people were here the right way. And in fact, we betrayed them at the 11th hour for getting their actual citizenship and then sent them back because we have a racist, white supremacist neo-Nazi in the White House. So,
there's no precedent for that. It reflects a remarkable attempt to shift what have been the historical precedents. And, I think the alarming question about the Percival op-ed is this is the general counsel of the Department of Homeland Security, the agency that runs ICE, CBP, you name it. Either he knows all of these things and wrote that op-ed anyway, or he doesn't. I'm not sure which of those is less comforting, but neither is especially reassuring.
And Steve, you've suggested that Minnesota prosecutors should create an online portal for individuals to upload their videos and other evidence of alleged ICE misconduct, not just for killings, but any abuse of power. What would that allow prosecutors to do even without federal cooperation?
Yeah, Juan, I think we heard this from Attorney General Ellison during his conversation with you guys before the break. Prosecutions depend upon evidence, and they depend upon evidence that can be admitted in court, that can be provided to a jury, that can provide the basis for establishing a defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Evidence in this context can include video, and it can include, video from multiple angles that would make it easier for prosecutors to establish that any particular act, not just the shooting of Alex Preti, violated Minnesota state law, and critically for our purposes, that these acts were not reasonable and necessary on the part of the federal officers in the carrying out of their duties. The doctrine here, the nerdy legal point, is something called supremacy clause immunity. The idea that in general, federal officers can't be held liable under state law for simply carrying out their duties, even if those duties conflict with state law. The duties have to win. One, the question's going to be, how could prosecutors show that the officers' actions were neither reasonable nor necessary? That's where I think this kind of video evidence, contemporaneous video evidence, could potentially be so critical and
okay. So federal agents can murder people in the street, apparently, so long as it's in the line of duty. Great. So now we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that wasn't reasonable to carrying out their duties, which is insane. And then secondly, why the fuck do we have to submit those videos when they are literally everywhere online? Like, you don't have interns or junior attorneys to sift through social media from Minneapolis and find these videos, download it, put it on a thumb drive, and submit it as Article A or Exhibit A in the evidence. Like, make that make any amount of sense. Like, what the actual fuck? Yeah, execution is legal. Go fucking figure. That's crazy. That hey, here is thousands of hours of footage of 30-second clips. So 30-second clips times 2 is a minute. A minute times 60 is an hour, and then thousands of hours. Right? Do the math on how many clips that is. Proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that this man was murdered and executed in broad daylight. And that's somehow still gonna not be enough? Like, or am I being a little disingenuous here in this conversation? Okay.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. We turn now to look more at the life of Alex Pretty, fatally shot by federal immigration agents in...
No, not fatally shot. Murdered. And again, maybe I'm missing something here. And I will admit if I am wrong. Okay? I, Samuel Ronan, can admit if he is wrong. Are these... Okay, so Democracy Now! Is not a... Like, they're not a recognized news source, right? Is that the stipulation? They're an independent news source, but they're trying to remain integrous and have the same viability as a syndicated news network would be, right? Like a trusted news source, right? Okay. So, if a journalist looks at a murder, sees that a murder happened, and then reports on said murder, but calls it a murder before the trial is all the way through, is that like a crime on their part or something for liability? Like, because if that's the case, all right, fine, whatever, I guess. Why do journalists never call a murder a murder? So it is a legality thing. And it can be used when the facts are undeniable. I mean, here's the screen. Oh, Trayvon Martin, back to 2012, everybody. Jesus Christ. Trayvon Martin, murdered in 2012, would have been, well, double his age, right? Like he was 11 or 13 or something when he was killed. So, news orgs have used a variety of words and phrases to describe Trayvon's death. Fatal shooting, shooting, and murder. We used the word murder in the headline of a story I wrote about the coverage of Martin and George Zimmerman, who shot him. Some readers pointed out, though, that it's premature to say Martin was the victim of murder, even though Zimmerman admitted to the shooting. He has not been charged. We've since added an editor's note to our story, and based on the reporting for this post, we changed the headline to say killing. Time magazine also used murder in the headline of its stories about Martin. After I contacted Time to find out about its decision, Daniel Kyle, executive director, sent me a note saying that Time has updated the post and added this note. The original version of this story used the word murder, which has judicial dimensions. We have substituted the word killing for the death of Trayvon Martin. Awesome. Well, I, Samuel Ronan, said he would admit if he was wrong, and I am admitting I was wrong. I guess you can't use the word murder to describe murder when it is clearly recorded in 4K and streamed in like 30 different angles, and it's obvious that it's murder. You can, I guess, to a degree, if it's that obvious that it's murder, right? But I guess if you're worried about legal ramifications, you can't call it murder. Okay, fair enough. All right. So I need to not be as angry about journalists and politicians not calling a duck when it walks, quacks, and talks like a duck. Well, that defeats the purpose of being independent. They're not really independent. They're just indifferent because they want everyone to watch them and want to, I guess, avoid lawsuits or something, I guess. If they say murder, then the people on the right might now watch it. Yeah, right, yeah. They can because this one is undeniable. Then they have no balls. I would agree that then they have no balls. Granted, so was Renee Good's murdered. I mean, straight up shot her, reached his gun into the vehicle, took aim, and shot her in the head. An officer is not trained. Well, I don't know actually anymore. That part I might not be right about. I'm not aware that cops are trained to shoot to kill. Maybe they are. Maybe they are trained to shoot to kill, and therefore, ICE agents who are, white supremacists with, records of domestic abuse being given a badge and impunity are just choosing to exercise that. I don't know. Suffice to say, as a person actively running for Congress. Oh, and might I add, I submitted my signatures. We have to wait until February 17th for confirmation that we're on the primary ballot, but there are any number of extenuating circumstances and statistics to suggest that we are good to go. Anywho, as a person actively running for the U.S. House of Representatives, Congress, as it's more commonly known, and someone who is going to be entering into the national spotlight at the federal level, dealing with legislation and the press and these legal ramifications and this, that, and the other, I am still unequivocally saying that Alex Pretty was murdered, that Renee Good was murdered by ICE, and that ICE is complicit of aiding and abetting a murderer and obstructing justice as an agency. Not just a few individuals with authority. The entire agency is aiding and abetting. The entire agency is committing acts of terrorism against the American public far beyond its fucking mandate. And I will argue that in court, and I will sue ICE into the ground and use that money to fund my campaign. So, Zateo called it a public execution, so there's at least one independent news media reporting it accurately. Can't stop the Ronan train? Toot, toot. And if you understood that reference, you probably have back pain, so. Bovino is going to be the scapegoat when the the ICE trials happen. Oh, no. He's not going to be the scapegoat. No, sir. No, sir. Every single one of those motherfuckers. Every single person in ICE. I don't give a shit if it's just the payroll clerk. Every single member of ICE is getting the Nuremberg treatment. And quite frankly, the Border Patrol is finding their way quickly on that same docket. And of course, the leadership of DHS, their asses are front and center of those Nuremberg trials. Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, Bovino, doesn't fucking matter. All of them. And don't forget, J.D. Vance lying about what the law actually is and what it means. Oh, his ass, Nuremberg. And then Trump for, facilitating it. So, no. And all of the judges, and all of the attorneys, and all of the prosecutors' offices who either sat on their heads and did nothing, or issued their rulings and verdicts and also didn't follow through. So, the Nuremberg trials are going to be biblical. They are going to probably be days on end for weeks, and they will damn near be national holidays. Kash Patel saying protesters can't exercise their 2A right, and yet they literally celebrate Kyle Rittenhouse every fucking chance they get. Palestine is known for supporting Hamas, and Hamas is in line with ISIS. Oh. I thought that was S4 gaming. Whoops. Trying to make a weird metaphor point. Which he has done in the past. But good catch. Never mind. All right. That person was trolling. Fair enough. Okay. So, yeah, let's do a bit of a remembrance.
In Minnesota Saturday morning after he tried to help a woman they had shoved to the ground. Preti was an intensive care nurse who worked at the Minneapolis Veterans Affairs healthcare system. The family of Alex released a statement saying in part, "We're heartbroken but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact," his family said. This is a video of Alex Preti working at the VA hospital. He's seen here reading a tribute to veteran Terrence Randolph, who died of cancer in 2024 at the VA hospital. Randolph's son posted the video online.
Terrence Lee Randolph, March 30th, 1947, December 10th, 2024. Today we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it. May we never forget and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So in this moment, we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to our nation in the cause of our freedom. In this solemn hour, we render our honor and our gratitude.
That was Alex Preti speaking.
And it's very poignant to point out, to highlight, if you will, that in that, I guess, is that a eulogy? I think that would be depicted as a eulogy. He highlighted the fact that our freedom must be protected and fought for. What greater example of that being the case today across the country, but more broadly in the present with this administration, with this regime. We are literally in a constitutional crisis, in a different constitutional crisis every other Tuesday, it feels like. And so if our democracy and our freedoms are being attacked by the very forces that are supposed to protect it, I mean, what's the point of swearing an oath to protect and defend the Constitution if you are directly dismantling it? Isn't violating an oath? I mean, should violating an oath be a crime? That's actually kind of curious. Now I'm kind of curious. Is violating an oath of office a crime in the USA? Violating an oath of office in the U.S. is not automatically a direct crime, but it often constitutes grounds for removal from office, civil liability, or criminal charges like perjury or treason, depending on the action taken. While specifically for the president, such violations are typically addressed through political processes like impeachment, other officials may face legal penalties. Now that's interesting because now there seems to be a constitutional reference in here too. So, the Supreme Court has not addressed these competing views, and the oath and its surrounding text do not suggest that questions about violations of the oath were intended for judicial resolution. The court has held that the president is generally immune from civil or criminal liability for official actions taken while in office, which may impede judicial resolution of questions relating to a violation of oath arising during the president's tenure. The Constitution's justiciability, that is a strange, justiciability, wow, that's a word, requirements are another potential obstacle to resolution in federal court. Impeachment provides a vehicle by which Congress may adjudicate a president's alleged violation of their oath. Articles of impeachment against Andrew Johnson charged the president with being unmindful of the high duties of his office and of his high oath of office. And then draft articles of impeachment to be used against Nixon allege that Nixon violated his oath, though he resigned before these articles were adopted. So, impeachment, I guess that's your only option, I guess. I'm sorry. I am really sorry, but I just, maybe I'm just a little too old school. You know, maybe I've played one too many fantasy Middle Earth type games where you have my axe and my blade and my bow. I swear an oath to thee. Maybe I've played too many of those kinds of games, right? Maybe I've read too many of those novels and watched too many of those movies, right? Whether it's fantasy or sci-fi, right? My life for Ner'zhul, right? My life for the Imperium, whatever, right? Okay. But I swear, right? And then left hand on the Bible, right? I swear to do said thing for said reason and to protect the Constitution of the United and abide by the Constitution, right? Like those, the Bible, right? The Bible. I just, I don't understand. Why is there not an existing vehicle, whether within the Constitution or federal law, state law, whatever else, that if you're elected and you are deliberately undermining the very thing you swore an oath to protect, like you're immediately removed and then charged and sentenced accordingly. Like I really don't get it. I'm not understanding why there aren't immediate repercussions for these gross actions against our democracy. Crimes against democracy, if you will. I'm not... my little autistic brain can't handle it, right? 1 + 1 does not equal 2 in this arithmetic, right? I swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. My first act as president to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States that I just swore an oath to do is to undermine it in every conceivable way possible over an extended period of time because I have a complicit judicial branch and congressional branch with me. Well, I'm sorry, judicial and legislative. And that's not just a trigger for impeachment or like, I don't know, targeting people based on their ethnic race? Violating people's due process? I am ordering this agency to go violate this class of people, specifically their Fourth Amendment rights. I am ordering that to happen, and I'm putting you, young lady, in charge of doing that. How is that just not an immediate impeachment? Immediate removal from office. Like that? Or the fact that the vice president is like, oh yeah, they can do that, because, reasons. I mean, he swore an oath too. And I know Bovino swore an oath, because everybody swears the oath. There's always an oath to be sworn, and it includes the Constitution. So we're just going to disregard the Constitution when it's inconvenient because we want to be Nazis? I'm sorry, we don't want to go back to our roots as a nation? You know, bring back the Page Act, bring back the Chinese Exclusion Act, bring back, you know, all of the other Jim Crow and everything else under the sun? I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. Okay, so chat. Sorry, chat. Alex Pretty was a veteran, a nurse, and worked with veterans, and Republicans are saying this guy is a terrorist. Yeah, make that make sense. Republicans are also saying that bringing a gun to a protest is no longer protected. You know, considering they always bring guns to protests to try and intimidate protesters. And he did die doing just that, protecting and serving his community. Yep. All good, S4. Have a good night. Fuck eyes, free Palestine, rip Renee and Alex, and remove Trump. Have a good night. That's one hell of a sign-off. I like it. Right, that's all they've been doing forever is bringing guns. And back when guns were harder to come by, they just, you know, murdered people. So, okay.
Democracy Now!'s John Hamilton was in the streets of Minneapolis this weekend and filed this report.
9 a.m. on Saturday morning, gunshots ring out across a stretch of the Whittier neighborhood of South Minneapolis known as Eat Street. Video of the homicide.
Oh, sorry, we're not watching the video. That's pretty fucking graphic, and this vantage point didn't show the actual shots going into Alex Pretty. But you heard those gunshots. Bang, bang, ba-bang, ba-bang, bang, bang. Emptying a fucking clip into a person is murder. Period. Dot. End of story. Like, that's murder. Especially when the person was already detained and the firearm that he had on his person was also removed. Like, there is literally zero justification at that point to open fire on anyone. Not resisting, fully under your control, and disarmed. And then bang, ba-bang, bang, ba-bang, bang, bang, bang. That's straight up murder. Execution.
Homicide began to circulate across social media, prompting shocked and angry neighbors to pour into the streets despite temperatures below 0 Fahrenheit. Within hours, protesters from across the Twin Cities region converged near the intersection of Nicollet Avenue and 26th Street, the site of the killing. They were met with extraordinary violence.
That sounds like a fucking war zone. The bullets and then rocket launchers going off. Like, what the fuck? This sounds like an actual war zone. And all because they murdered somebody and protesters rightfully showed up in the large numbers. Oh my God.
Kill me if you want me! Don't take it, sister, and save my life!
Those arrested by the masked federal agents were shoved into unmarked SUVs, many with out-of-state plates.
They took my sister, Donna. She was on the corner exercising her First Amendment right to protest. We were standing on the corner. We got separated by ICE, and I turned around to find her, and she was being thrown on the ground, and there was, 4 or 5 agents on top of her, and then they drug her to a car or to something. It might be that van down there. Sorry, I just want to find my sister Donna, please. Somebody help me find where I can pick her up.
Okay. We were just running away from the gas. That's all we were doing. Where is she right now? He's being arrested by ICE.
Just as they did after ICE agent Jonathan Ross fatally shot Renee Good on January 7th, federal agents blocked state investigators with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension from approaching the scene, even after BCA officers obtained a warrant signed by a judge.
My name is Kevin. I live a block away from here. I woke up today and heard the news and immediately came outside to start protesting. These people are Nazi fascists and they need to get out of our neighborhoods. They need to be abolished. This entire agency needs to be abolished. The constitutional observers are being dragged out of their vehicles. They're still breaking their windows, breaking out of their vehicles, pepper spraying. I'm seeing people being pepper sprayed who are just lying down and already tackled by 3 Border Patrol agents. This latest video, this person, 6 Border Patrol agents around them, and they still shot them 5 times in the street. It's just outright murder. They're just outright murdering us.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeremy, and right now I'm standing on Stevens and 26th here, and I've got a ton of ICE agents sitting in the street, and they're all trying to push us back and get us out of the area. Just this morning, 6 ICE officers shot and killed 1 person. I came out here to protest, and all they have done ever since is arrest innocent people for walking into the street.
About 4 hours after they were filmed committing homicide in a video that was already...
Well, hot damn. Filmed committing homicide. That is literally the most outgoing thing I have heard coming out of these videos so far.
Already racing across the internet, the masked federal agents left the scene.
Fleeing a scene is also a crime. Just to throw that out there.
They drove away angry but peaceful protesters with volleys of tear gas, concussion grenades, and other so-called less lethal weapons. ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal agents left in a convoy of SUVs, tailed by an armored vehicle, vacating a crime scene without any coordination with state or local law enforcement.
As they were leaving, they just started throwing tear gas and concussion flashbangs into the crowd. Nobody was doing anything. I was literally shaking hands with people I was talking to as they were leaving.
Just minutes after federal agents left the scene, uniformed state police officers fired volleys of tear gas as they left in a convoy that was flanked by a pair of armored vehicles.
So, ICE attacked protesters after murdering an innocent person. And then police attacked protesters as they were just leaving. Just straight up were in the process of leaving. They're like, oh, you know what? When in Rome, let's also tear gas and concussion grenade protesters, because why the fuck not? Are you kidding me? It was clearly a mistake to watch this video, because I was calm until about 2 minutes. How long has this been going? 4 minutes ago. I was calm relatively up until 4 minutes ago. Like, are you fucking serious? ICE agents deploy or counter retreat measures. I forget now the phrasing. It's been a second. They cover their retreat by using tear gas smoke screens. And then Minneapolis police does the same fucking thing. And then people are like, well, why aren't the police protecting us? Because they're fucking part of the problem. Why aren't they arresting ICE? Because they're part of the problem.
Reverend Genjo Sam Conway lives 3 blocks from the scene of the killing. He woke up to the sound of a helicopter overhead and rushed to the scene after learning the news.
This is somebody else. This is the DNR now, and the State Patrol is what it looks like. We don't understand, 1, why they're here, and we don't understand, 2, why they're allowed to be masked as well. They are also refusing to identify themselves and not providing badge numbers or names. Get ICE out of here and be on our side. You're supposed to protect us. Not them. They don't live here. Help us. Help us right now. This is an occupation.
And not a single fucking lie was spoken.
With the stench of tear gas still in the air, protesters gathered by the hundreds at the intersection of 26th and Nicollet Avenue, where they erected barricades cutting off vehicle traffic and erecting a memorial at the site of the killing.
Should be outraged! All of you should be mad! All of you should be angry! We cannot stand for this! Say his name!
I mean, that lady is absolutely correct. The fact that the people of Minneapolis only came out in their hundreds and not their thousands is a failure. Like, how... That was a literal war zone. That was an actual, honest-to-God war zone. That was a literal battle. That was a skirmish. That was a bona fide, one-sided conflict, because the protesters weren't shooting back, because then, well, you get the idea. Minneapolis could absolutely swarm the 3,000 agents, even if it's just the adults, the 18 or olders. Of the 450,000 in Minneapolis, that should still be 300, let's just say 315. 315,000 people can take an ICE agent 100 to fucking 1. So I really don't understand how ICE is still there, and especially with how outraged this city is, like, storm them. Like, by this point, you should have the shields and the masks and all of the protective gear necessary to make it past the front line to their front line, and then arrest them through citizens arrests. And if the cops get involved, arrest them fucking too. Like, I'm really not understanding, right? Or, okay, cool, fine, I get it. That's kind of advocating for violence. I shouldn't do that. Why aren't the 315,000 working age Minneapolians not just constantly refusing to go to work? Like, where's the general strike? Where's the sustained general strike? I'm just saying, they can try and tear gas you all, but they would be very fucking stupid to tear gas a crowd of 300,000 individuals. That's all. That's all I gotta say on that. They wanted to kill him, and now KK Kristi Noem is saying that he didn't have ID, so it was illegal for him to conceal carry. First of all, I doubt that, and also they did not ask for or check for his ID before emptying a clip at him, which is also true. The lies coming from these people are insane. You have to be a total brainwashed moron in order to believe their BS. And the fact that they lying about, if talking about an ongoing case and calling it a murder before it's been adjudicated as a murder is, like, I guess it's not illegal, but it's certainly frowned upon, then surely shouldn't talking bad about a victim also be equally frowned upon? Or no? Wait, no, that's what Empire does. My bad. Sorry. Preponderance of the we have the guns. Fuck you.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman as we continue to look at the deadly federal immigration crackdown in Minnesota. We're joined now by the civil rights attorney, minister, and activist Nekima Levy-Armstrong. On Friday, she was released from jail a day after she and at least 2 others were arrested for participating in an anti-ICE demonstration at City's Church in St. Paul, where one of the pastors also leads a local ICE field office. This is a clip from that protest.
David Easterwood is a pastor here. He is also the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. So someone who claims to worship God, teaching people in this church about God, is out there overseeing ICE agents.
Nekima Levy-Armstrong was arrested by Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, and FBI agents at the direction of Attorney General Pam Bondi.
So 3 different alphabet soup agencies converged upon her home in person to arrest her, directed by Attorney General Pam Bondi, which is literally violating, it's targeting her for political purposes. She exercised her rights. She had every right to go to a church and record the Nazi giving a fucking sermon. Oh my God.
Announced Armstrong's arrest on social media, referring to the protest as a, quote, coordinated attack on a house of worship. The White House then posted an AI-altered image of Nekima's arrest, making it appear she was crying, along with the text, arrested far-left agitator Nekima Levy-Armstrong for orchestrating church riots in Minnesota, unquote. The unaltered image clearly shows she was not crying. Nekima, welcome back to Democracy Now! There's so much to talk about since you were released from jail, not to mention what they have done to your image, not to mention them, what has happened on Saturday, which we will mention, which is the killing of a second protester, Alex Pretty. Your response that all that has transpired. In a moment, we're going to go to the mass protest of tens of thousands of Minnesotans on Friday.
I think it's absolutely despicable, Amy, what our federal government is doing under the guise of immigration enforcement. They have essentially waged war in the streets of Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. And as you can see, 2 innocent civilians, American citizens, have been brutally murdered at the hands of ICE agents. Not only that, but as you saw, I'm being criminalized for helping to lead a nonviolent, peaceful demonstration inside of a church in which David Easterwood serves as a pastor, but also serves as the overseer for ICE agents in Minnesota. He is the very person who was cited in a lawsuit that was in front of Judge Menendez, where he was justifying the conduct of ICE agents, claiming that they were not behaving unconstitutionally, and also blaming protesters, claiming that protesters are the aggressors. So when you look collectively at
that motherfucker wouldn't be alive if protesters were the aggressors. Do they not understand? Like, I really don't get it. I really don't get it. If protesters who were showing up in their tens of thousands wanted to be violent, there is not a goddamn thing 3,000 poorly trained ICE agents would have been able to do about that. First of all, the ICE agents are just wearing tactical looking gear. They're not wearing plates, and the few that are wearing helmets are probably not wearing level 4. They're just not. I'm going to be very honest with you. They're just not. And despite everything, people are choosing to not cross the line of violence. They're literally not choosing violence. They are literally making the conscious decision to not be violent. Because if they did, for one, it would only take one protester, especially when there's that many people, and especially when they're that angry, it would take one person saying, fuck this, and attacking an ICE agent, and it would trigger every single protester in the same moment. And in the heat of the moment, they would swarm and converge upon ICE. They would take whatever blasts of non-lethal rounds to the face and chest, not feel the pain, not notice their eyesight being diminished, their teeth being blown apart, their noses ripped off their ear, any of that, right? The pain of the heat and the tear gas, right? And they would literally start tearing these ICE agents apart like fucking animals. So, to have the audacity to state that protesters are the aggressors while still being alive and not through a seance or a Ouija board of, wow, these protesters were really violent against me, is some ballsy rhetoric. Because if you think this is aggressive when they are literally just standing their ground and trying to protect each other, buddy, oh boy. They think this is violence. Wait until they see what's coming. Well, that would be advocating violence on Twitch, which is against the terms of service. So we can't advocate. What I can say is whenever the violence does occur from the side of the protests, it will have been after a critical mass has been reached of violence being committed against protesters, right? And civilians and citizens of Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. So whenever that point is reached, that is what will spark the violence. Now, granted, that is also the point. This administration is trying to cause chaos. They are trying to incite violence in the cities, and that is largely why people have remained peaceful. But ICE is now turning its attention to Philadelphia, a city that is globally, as far and as wide across the world and society goes, is renowned for its peacefulness, its polite behavior, and its lack of aggression in its population. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the city known as the city of sweet little baby angels. Whatever ICE does in Philadelphia, wouldn't want to be an ICE agent. That's all I gotta say. I would not want to be an ICE agent in Philadelphia. Because if you think you're going to get away with doing in Philadelphia what you're doing in Minneapolis, may God have mercy on your soul, because they sure as shit are not. So, I digress. Back to the stream.
Joining us now is Kyle Cheney. He is the senior legal affairs reporter for Politico. Good to see you, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you both.
Kyle, so a lot of legal developments happening now with respect to Minneapolis and Minnesota. Let's go ahead and put this first tear sheet up here on the screen. Trump and Bondi statements fuel the legal case against a Minnesota surge. At a hearing Monday, a judge focused on the letter the Attorney General sent. Can you give us an update here on the legal arguments in the case as there's a new effort by Minnesota authorities to stop the ICE operations in their state?
Yeah, this is the most significant and maybe the most extreme legal effort we're seeing, which is to basically by the state government to say we want to end Operation Metro Surge altogether. This is just, you can't not entirely kick ICE out of the state, but kick this stepped up operation out. And what
I'm going to stop you right the fuck there. What do you mean you can't kick ICE out of the state? What the fuck do you... States... goddamn fucking rights. Is that not the whole thing? The entire fucking argument that conservative shitbags have been making since they lost the Civil War and lost the right to own people. States' rights. Well, the Civil War was fought over states' rights to own slaves. So we can have a century plus of antebellum racist bullshit advocating for dehumanizing and re-enslaving black folk and every other non-white demographic in America. But when it comes to ejecting and expelling a federal agency that is committing terror in your state, that's the right that you don't have anymore? Where's the states' rights activists? Right? Where's all the don't tread on me motherfuckers? Don't tread on me. They are literally waging war in a city. That's what you get, you filthy fucking liberals. What? You had the snake on the back of your pickup truck with the lifted kit and the truck nuts and your crossed rifles. Dude. You have been training your whole life to fight a tyrannical government. And in Minneapolis, Minnesota, there is a tyrannical government assaulting civilians. This is your time. I'm not advocating for violence. In your own words, these are the exact material conditions you have been advocating for and begging to have happen so that you can be a goddamn war hero. And every single one of these motherfuckers ended up being a bootlicking, stormtrooper-loving piece of garbage. And now the state of Minnesota, on top of all that, is arguing to just stop the surge because we don't have the right to remove you from our state? Chat, why are Democrats such fucking incompetent, weak-willed, spineless cowards? I know they're controlled opposition. I know the answer to my own question. I want to get... Hold on. This is a very important question. We're going to go back to this screen. Can a member of Congress punch another member of Congress without getting charged? Just a mild curiosity here. A member of Congress can absolutely be charged for punching another member, as assault is a federal crime. While the Constitution allows each house to discipline its own members for disorderly behavior, this does not grant immunity from criminal prosecution from physical violence. Well, dang. Privilege from arrest? Oh, interesting. Interesting. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law. They shall in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses, and in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house they shall not be questioned in any other place. That's interesting. The interpretation has held that the phrase treason, felony, and breach of peace encompasses all criminal offenses. Consequently, members are only privileged from arrest arising from civil suits which were common in America at the time the Constitution was ratified. Okay. The framers followed English parliamentary practices, provided that the measure... discuss the practices of... when a representative is withdrawn from his seat by a summons, the people whom he represents lose their voice in debate and vote as they do in this voluntary absence. When a senator is deemed not only merely the privilege of the member or his constituents, but the privilege of the House also. Okay, that's been subject to debate. So hold on, folks. We might be able to punch a congressman. After examining the historical meaning of the provision, the Supreme Court, Williamson versus the United States, concluded the qualifying language encompassed all... Ah, dang, I guess not. The words breach of the peace should not be narrowly construed, but should be held to embrace substantially all crimes, and therefore has an effect confining the parliamentary... Blah, 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 blah. All arrests for criminal offense, other confining the privilege alone to arrest in civil cases. Consequently, under Supreme Court precedent, the privilege from arrest applies only to civil cases. As one commentator has noted, in practice, since the abolition of imprisonment for debt, this particular clause has lost most of its importance. And in States versus Cooper, a newspaper publisher was indicted under the Sedition Act, oh Jesus, for libeling John Adams, sought to compel several members of Congress to testify as weapon in allowing of a subpoena. I see. So they can't avoid subpoenas. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Has a member of Congress ever been charged with assaulting another member of Congress for no reason whatsoever other than mild curiosity? There are instances. The infamous caning of Charles Sumner. Formal criminal charges for assaulting another member are rare, though allegations and physical confrontations have occurred in modern times. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene accused Representative Richard McCormick of physical assault in 2023, though no charges were filed. Interesting. LaMonica McIver was charged in 2025 with assaulting federal officers during a confrontation rather than a fellow member. I see. Good to know. My curiosity has been sated. For no reason whatsoever. Unrelated to that, I am running for House of Representatives as a Republican in my very strongly Republican district against Mike Carey. So this channel is also here to show my normal side, less political side, I guess. Well, less politician-y side, I guess I should say. And I would never advocate violence, especially against my peers.
What that means and how that works in a legal and constitutional sense is really complicated and kind of new territory. But what you saw there, what you flagged, is that the judge who is considering this was kind of alarmed that, you have this letter from Pam Bondi that says, you want the surge to end? Do these three things. And she lays out three policy demands, including things like, giving us your SNAP data, giving us your voter roll information, things that have nothing to do with the immigration problem that the administration is purporting to resolve here. And so the judge is saying you're kind of making it explicit that this surge may be about coercing policy, which that's a red line you can't cross. And so that's where...
which is a crime. Prosecute and charge this bitch. Are you fucking kidding me?
The legal, the legal fight is, and I think the real issue is, if the judge decides that it is illegal, what can she actually do about it as a single district judge? Say, the administration can't, enforce immigration law. Well, that's kind of an easier thing to say out loud than to actually do in practice. And what's the line? So it's very complicated.
Got it.
Yeah, and so
No, it's not complicated. It's called failure for democracy to act. It's not complicated. You charge that bitch for crimes, and then you arrest every single member of ICE for conspiracy to commit crimes and create chaos for political gain, which is called terrorism. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. It's in fact very black and fucking white. All of you are too goddamn cowardly to fucking say it.
from your reporting, it seems like the two things that really gave the state something to work with here was that letter from Pam Bondi, and also Trump posting that, retribution was coming to Minnesota or to Minneapolis. And so that gave...
Seriously? This motherfucker's tweeting about retribution now, too? Again, terrorism. Terrorism. That is the crime actively being committed. You don't need to go. It is undeniable.
Them more of a case to work with. And you also mentioned that this kind of harkens back to some of the Obamacare rulings, where a part of it, the Medicaid expansion piece, the mandatory Medicaid expansion piece, was struck down under the same theory that you're basically compelling states, you're using threats of pulling funding.
Right. Because the precedent was set that you're for... So wait, the states have all the rights in the world to deny their people health care, but they don't have the right to expel an entire federal agency from committing acts of terror in the state? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you... Okay.
And compelling states to push forward policy. So could you lay that out a little bit, that connection there, and how strong you think the state's case is at this point?
Yeah, I started at Politico 14 years ago to cover that exact case.
Oh, wow.
And it gave
Full
me
circle
flashbacks. That's sort of the centerpiece here, is that the Supreme Court ruled very clearly that the federal government cannot use the sort of cudgel of funding, pulling funding to force states to adopt policies that those states don't want to adopt. And so
if this is already established case law, and hear me out, if this is already established case law, then why the fuck are we not kicking ICE out of the state? Because they have the right. I don't. Okay.
the federal government does have a role in sort of, incentivizing things that it prefers, policies it prefers, but it can't, if the Supreme Court says you can't use funding as a cudgel, what the state is saying is you definitely can't use like a militarized force of federal agents and wreaking havoc on the streets to cause the same result. That's worse. That's much further over the line than a funding threat in the state's view. And so, again, if the judge decides, yeah, I agree with you, then the question is what's the remedy? And that's a bigger problem. But I think that's where so the judge is at least deciding now, does she agree with the state's view on that?
Got it. Can we put the next one? I just set you up, Mac, on the screen. Kyle, you were reporting this morning that the chief federal judge in Minnesota, has ordered the head of ICE to appeal personally in court Friday and threatened him with contempt and for the agency's repeated violation of court orders. The court's patience is at an end. Kyle, can you just break that down for us?
Yeah, this is sort of a big moment. Judge Schultz, he's the chief judge, George W. Bush appointed judge, and has already had this clash with the administration over this attempt to arrest Don Lemon and the church protesters. So he's clearly at a boiling point with the administration already over this. But what he's saying is, our courts have been inundated. We've been flooded with these immigration cases, emergency petitions, people who've been arrested by ICE during this surge. And we're finding over and over again that their arrests and detentions have been illegal, using a sort of new interpretation of the law the administration has adopted in recent months. And what he's saying here is, we keep ordering you to release people, and you're not doing it. We're getting emergency secondary petitions saying you haven't released this person, or you shipped them to Texas despite our order saying keep them here in Minnesota. And we've reached that's sort of the tipping point now. Is it's happened so many times, and our courts are flooded with these cases right now. And so he's ordering, Todd Lyons, head of ICE, to come in directly, personally in court, and saying if you can't answer questions to my satisfaction, I might hold you in contempt. And that's sort of the most confrontational we've seen. Or I guess really anywhere. These petitions are flooding the courts all over the country, but they're particularly acute in Minnesota now because of the surge.
This dude just spent a minute or a half a minute, something like that, talking about how the courts are inundated and flooded with multiple petitions, sometimes secondary and tertiary petitions to not do a thing that they already ordered them not to do. Again, if you or I were told by a court to not do something and we turned around and did it anyway, the exact first thing that would happen is boot leather would be kicking down our fucking doors and dragging us to prison. So if ICE as an agency is being ordered to stop doing things, and not only do they keep doing those things, but then go even further through committing the crime of trafficking, where's the follow through? Like, you can only send cops to break the legs of the poor? At what point is that not just a gang then? Give me your protection money or else. So what? Are you also saying that your gang is weaker than this gang? Is ICE the biggest gang on the block now? Is that what you're trying to say? You're afraid for a turf war? Because that's goddamn pathetic. ICE is brand spanking new and they're not even smart. I don't know. I just got done watching Warrior, and that had to do with gang violence. But
what does that mean what does it precisely mean if they did hold him in contempt? Because we've also seen, during the Kilmar Abrego Garcia situation, during the CCOT situation, there was a possibility of the various government officials being held in contempt. We had in Chicago, Greg Bovino specifically was called out for any number of lies. I mean, this is incredibly systematic. So do you think even if this guy is held in contempt, do you think that would make a difference to them? Do you think that would change their behavior? Is it any sort of severe penalty?
It's a great question. I mean, the judge can sort of decide the penalty, and then that can include, again, I don't think that happens on the spot. And I think to your point, there's a lot of frustration out there that judges keep saying our orders are being violated. We need to have accountability here, and that accountability takes forever, and then it usually fizzles in some way. Or in the case of the Alien Enemies Act that you mentioned, the CCOT situation, the appeals court stopped Judge Boasberg from continuing his contempt proceedings, and for months. And then when they allowed him to continue it, he started it again. He started down the path again, and they stopped him again. And so it does feel like it's a sort of imperfect and clunky method because it almost never gets used against federal government officials. That it's sort of there as a last resort for the courts, but we've never seen an administration take things so far that the courts are actually saying we need to actually utilize this rarely used tool, and now they're seeing all the sort of rust or the challenges with actually making that happen. But they can make things very uncomfortable, at least for the administration, by hauling people in. Again, the threat is a pretty big deal on its own. And if the judge is motivated, he can say, unless some higher court stops him, he can say, we can, whether it's, again, the punishment is tricky. Can you throw someone in jail? Can you fine them as a government official? It's, they have to cross that bridge when it gets there.
Right. Makes
Well, folks, evidently the judicial branch of the United States of America is powerless to do a single solitary thing against federal agents because a higher court could strike them down, and there's no precedent for doing so. And it's really tricky to do and very clunky and can take some time. And then if it's like, are you serious? So the courts are powerless to deal with the federal government. But if you or me do so much as jaywalk and get a ticket and don't show up to the courtroom, we can get dragged out of our houses with a judicial warrant, arrested, charged for contempt or whatever, thrown in prison and fined for jaywalking and sticking our nose up at that. They have all the tools and resources to carry that out within days, but can't go after federal agents or leaders or whatever else. And you expect us to believe that shit? And the fact that those two, Crystal and Sager, are not bringing that up at, like, what is the goddamn point? Are you independent news? Or, like, are you hard-hitting independent? Like, I'm not. True steel, if they can catch you. Yeah, I mean, I guess. But then you're evading arrest and you're fleeing a warrant and so on and so forth. Like, there's just more crimes that they pile onto you. And so when you are eventually caught, they throw the entire book at you, all for jaywalking. So now we're talking about coercion. We're talking about conspiracy. We're talking about domestic terrorism, kidnapping, trafficking, violation of the Fourth Amendment, violating people's civil liberties, period. Profiling people, which is in violation of the 14th Amendment. Like, we're talking about severe, high crimes against the state. And we're powerless to stop them, powerless to enforce them. Then what's the fucking point of the courts other than to subjugate poor people? And if that's the case, then what are we doing, folks? General strike now. Remove all of these judges from their bench. Remove all of these legislators from office. Remove all of these executives from their offices. And put people in place that'll write laws and enforce laws and carry out the judicial oversight of those laws, where bad people get held accountable for being bad. This is not rocket science. But what do I know?
Well, and that systematic nature of what you're talking about is something that you have been tracking. This is what I just had up on the screen. You said you've tracked at least 2,300 cases in which federal judges have ruled ICE has illegally detained people without bond or due process. And then you flag one there specifically. I mean, take us through the details of when you say these individuals have been detained without bond or due process, that this has been done illegally. Just walk us through what that means and what this looks like for these individuals.
So it's really complicated, and it's something but it traces back to a very specific moment, which is that in July, Director Lyons, who we just talked about, adopted a new interpretation of old immigration laws, things that date back to the mid-90s, in which case, it used to be that when the federal government would encounter someone at the border, they could quickly put them into deportation proceedings and hold them in detention and essentially lock them up while those proceedings were pending. What the Trump administration has done is reinterpret that to say anyone we encounter anywhere in the country, essentially, even people who have been here for decades, we actually not only can we lock them up, we must lock them up under our new interpretation of the law. It's mandatory, and they don't get a chance for bond at all. And the courts across the country, writ large, have reacted sort of with horror at this because they're starting to get all these people filing emergency petitions.
Well, clearly they are not horrified enough, because their response has been, "Don't do that. It's against the law. But if you do it anyway, we're going to hold you in contempt and block ourselves repeatedly from holding you in contempt, which means nothing is getting done." Hello.
saying, I've lived here for 30 years, no criminal record, a job, a community, my kids are citizens. I've done nothing wrong, and I went into my ICE check-in that I do, a few times a year, and they arrested me. And judges are saying they're not only are they arresting me, they're saying I can't even ask for bond. I can't even go to court and show an immigration judge. I'm not a danger to the community. I'm not a flight risk, which is normally what the opportunity you have. They're just saying I'm held indefinitely, and so the judges. The 2,300 number you mentioned is how many cases I've been tracking, all over the country. That's cases where there have been rulings agreeing that the detention was illegal. These people should either be released immediately or get a bond hearing at a minimum. And there's thousands more that are pending. And again, Minnesota has become sort of the hotbed of these. We're seeing dozens filed every day of these cases and rulings, again, finding them illegal, these detentions. But it is really a national story.
Kyle,
let's try a different tactic, because repeating and regurgitating and rehashing the criminality of our government and the apparent inability and ineptitude of our court systems to do a fucking thing about it is extremely infuriating. So now
good morning, everybody.
This video looks like it might be promising. Bovino out and Noem on the rocks. Noem. Well,
Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. Trump retreating somewhat, at least in Minneapolis. Big developments there that we'll break down for you. We also have Kyle Cheney. He is a political analyst for Politico who's been following all of the legal developments very closely. Some significant decisions that have been made that are pending as well. So he'll break that down for us. We've also got a little bit of Trump health speculation.
I think we watched these two videos out of order. We should have watched this one first and then the other one, but
Not a great moment for him in a recent interview, so we'll dig into that as well. We've got some economic news, dollar crashing, gold spiking, and then also crashing. Not sure what's going on there. A bunch of housing start cancellations, so some troubling signs there. TikTok going full censorship, although they are blaming it on a data outage. We will sort through fact and fiction on that one and see if we can figure out what is going on. And Ahmed Khan, the frontline humanitarian and philanthropist, also executive producer actually of The Voice of Hind Rajab, is going to join us to talk about the latest with regard to the Gaza Board of Peace and what the reality on the ground is there right now. So a bunch of stuff to get to this morning.
Yes, that's right. Thank you to everybody who has been supporting the show. As Ryan and I mentioned yesterday, covering very controversial things like we are right now is basically just demonetization hell. We don't care because the vast majority of our revenue comes from you, our subscribers. So if you can support our show, breakingpoints.com, it enables our journalism. Ryan Grimm obviously being able to just break the news of that new angle on the shooting immediately here on our channel without having to worry about monetary concerns. Also, for our premium subscribers, we're aware that there's some sort of issue on Spotify video. We are working with the Spotify team and with locals and all of that to make sure that it is resolved as soon as possible. Just wanted to make sure, though, that you're not crazy. We're figuring it out, and so we will get there. But yes, Crystal, why don't we go ahead and jump into this huge developments in Minneapolis.
Do I need to do like a minute self-plug in the beginning of every video? At the beginning of every stream or before we start? Hi, my name is Samuel Ronan. Thank you for supporting me in the channel. Thank you for supporting me as I run for Congress in Ohio's 15th Congressional District. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe. And if you are able, please donate to the campaign or the channel, or subscribe on YouTube and donate through that. Because am I not self-serving enough to be a politician? Is that the problem? Do I need to? I am. It's like gives me hives to just be there and be like, as your next congressman, I, Samuel Ronan, am asking you to donate $5 to the Elect Sam Ronan campaign for 2026. The 15th Congressional District primary election against Mike Carey for the U.S. House of Representatives. With your monetary and physical support, we can win this campaign together. Samuel Ronan, I approve this message. I don't know. I can't I can't bring myself to do that. I did just now to be funny, but like, I don't know, man. It kills me.
Trump backing down, sidelining potentially Mr. Bovino.
Yes. So Greg Bovino has been the aggressive face of the Minneapolis occupation, in particular Chicago, as well as the, what do they call him, Commander at Large of the Border Patrol.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. This news broke yesterday. Bovino is being removed from that position. Now, they are not firing him entirely. He's going back to his old post in California. But Tom Homan, who is the quote-unquote border czar, is being brought in as well. No, Tom Homan is not exactly like a shrinking violet, not exactly a dove on these matters. But interestingly, within the administration, there's been a bit of a turf battle, which we've talked about before, Sagar, between CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, and ICE. Contrary to the, public perception, CBP is actually more insane than ICE is. And they were the ones who were in favor of, and Bovino in particular, these incredibly showy, aggressive, made for TV.
So Customs and Border Patrol is actually worse than ICE? Are you fucking So why isn't CBP on the news then? Because I don't see Customs and Border Patrol murdering people in the streets. I see ICE murdering people in the streets. So what?
Moments. So, for example, that raid on the Chicago apartment, including the helicopters rappelling in, just complete insanity. That was CBP. Reportedly, it's a CBP agent or multiple agents who were the ones who killed Alex Pretty. So, in any case, Bovino being removed.
I apparently stand corrected. It might allegedly have been CBP. I keep wanting to say CBD. Anyway, so it is Border Patrol committing the atrocities and using ICE as a veneer?
Move, Tom Homan coming in, Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski, according to this reporting.
Wait, is it Kristi Noem and not Kristi Noem? Wait a second. Did I inadvertently pronounce it correctly a while ago? That's funny.
Also, their jobs are at least somewhat shaky, their position somewhat in doubt, as Trump clearly tries to clean up what has become a massive political crisis for him.
What is so striking to me about this is how how completely discordant Trump is from many of his defenders, including in his administration. So, for example, Mac, why don't we go and put the next one up on the screen? Trump describing his phone call with Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. I mean, in this one, you can just see so clearly that Trump is trying to strike a very, very different tone. He says, Governor Tim Walz called me with requests to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call. We actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. Talking about, he says, the governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. He was happy with Tom Homan going to Minnesota, and so am I. He also, though, you see in Tim Walz's statement, something a bit similar. Governor Walz had a productive call with President Trump today. The governor made the case that we need impartial investigations of the Minneapolis shooting, that we need to reduce the number of federal agents. The president agreed he would talk to the Department of Homeland Security about ensuring Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is able to conduct an independent investigation, as would ordinarily be in the case. The president also agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota and working with the state in a more coordinated fashion on immigration enforcement regarding violent criminals. So you can see very clearly in that. And the next one, Mac, if we can, Trump's announcement of Tom Homan. This was, I actually think, the most significant one because, as you said, there's been a bit turf war inside of the administration between Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski, and Tom Homan. So as you said, Tom Homan is not some shrinking violet, but fundamentally, and Ryan even talked about this yesterday when he noted Tom Homan's response to the Renee Good shooting. He didn't immediately come out and say anything. He's like, look, we need to wait for a process. And it's because at the end of the day, like, he's a cop. Like, this is somebody who worked under the Obama administration, for example. And yes, he definitely has strongly held political views, but is also somebody who at least reportedly has wanted to take a very different tactic whenever it comes to deportation and specifically trying to focus on criminals and people with violent.
It's been widely reported that Tom Homan was the reason why separating families became a policy because it would deter illegal border crossings. Also, if Trump has the authority to draw down ICE, which obviously he does, and therefore their current presence or the fact that they were there in the first place is due to his order, that would literally put Trump as the number one reason why we have domestic terrorists in Minneapolis today, which means the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is a domestic terrorist in causing terror in the United States of America, which, aside from violating his oath, is itself a fucking crime. Can we please impeach the motherfucker? Please. Please. All right. We haven't gotten very far in this playlist, but it is mostly, I mean, it's mostly ICE anyway. I mean, let's scroll down a little bit. Is there anything that isn't ICE? Oh, TikTok. Yeah.
TikTok has finalized a deal to allow its American business to continue operating. The app was due to be banned in the U.S. this month if its Chinese owner, ByteDance, failed to sell its operations in the country to U.S. investors. So let's get the latest on this breaking story now with our technology correspondent, Lily Jamali. Lily, it's great to see you. What more do we know about this deal and the investors involved?
Well, a lot of what we're learning today is information that had been floated in recent weeks, but we knew that today was going to be the closing date on this deal, and now it is confirmed. So we can say with certainty now that the U.S. assets of TikTok are now majority held by Oracle, the cloud computing giant, which is run by Larry Ellison, as we've talked about before, a close political ally of Donald Trump's. Other entities that are going to be taking part in this purchase include MGX, which is an Emirati investment firm. And when you look down the list of who is going to be on the board of this new U.S. entity, there's a lot of investment firms, Silver Lake, TPG, Susquehanna International, and others. What this announcement today does is, finally kind of put to rest all the uncertainty that has been clouding TikTok here in the United States with its 200 million users, puts that uncertainty to rest. This U.S. entity is now in the majority hands of American investors.
And Lily, remind us the background to all of this, the ban that we saw put in place and how President Trump has reacted.
Are we not going to talk about the fact that the new TikTok terms and conditions are the most invasive terms and conditions? It's essentially, they turned TikTok into literal spyware. It has geo-tracking even if you turn it off on your phone, and they have complete ownership and copyright ownership of everything that you post, meaning content creators are out the window. They no longer own their own material, and they can shut down your channel without notice. Oh, and you can't post anything political. Not a single fucking thing. But we're not going to talk about that? Okay. What else?
In California, jury selection begins later today in a landmark trial of social media companies. The tech giants are accused of causing addiction and mental health problems with their products in a case that could have wide-ranging implications. Our tech correspondent, Lily
I
Jamali.
thought that was already clearly established, that the algorithms are addictive and causing severe social and psychological issues.
Platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram are where billions of users around the world go to be entertained, informed, and to stay connected. But there's a dark side, according to lawyers for an alleged victim identified by her initials, KGM.
KGM is a young woman who got on social media at the age of 8 and sustained a social media addiction that had a very negative effect on her emotional and psychological well-being.
And he says she's not alone in finding herself addicted to social media.
Unfortunately, there are all too many kids in the United States and in the UK and around the world who are suffering as KGM does because of the dangerous and addictive algorithms.
Attorneys say the trial starting Tuesday marks the first time in history that social media companies have ever been held to account by a jury in a court of law anywhere in the world. For years, the companies that run Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube have successfully used a 26-word legal provision from 1996, before social media even existed, as a legal shield. They've argued it means they're not responsible for what users post to their platforms. These cases will examine how the companies design their platforms.
So wait, they're not responsible at users post to their platform, but go out of their way to make sure that Nazis are on their platform and that algorithms ban them from time to time. I mean, it has happened from time to time. I know Twitter is no longer doing that, but there are, like, you can't have child porn or pornography on Meta. So, like, they do, in fact, control what is on their platforms within certain limitations. So that argument doesn't make any goddamn sense anymore because, again, on Facebook, you can't post porn. You literally can't. And no platform will allow you to post child porn, right? Which, that if you literally couldn't control anything, those would be the two big things. You also can't post snuff videos, right? Although the picture or the video of Alex Pretty being murdered by ICE agents doesn't count because that is actual breaking news, right? So to say that you can't control what's being posted, or that there are community rules and that there's terms and conditions that you can arbitrarily apply when you want to, and you've been using that to shield yourself in legal arguments for decades now, I mean, come on. Absolutely, oh my God.
Platforms, relying on company documents to show how they kept users scrolling, sometimes with catastrophic consequences.
So a lot of what these companies have been trying to shield from the public is likely going to be aired in court, and that is also significant.
Executives like Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg are also set to take the stand. He's defended his company on this issue in the past.
And they're not often good under pressure when they have to answer questions about what did you know and when did you...
Yeah, because they think they are gods. These tech giants think they are the superior human evolution. They think that they are God's gift to humanity and that they will save us from ourselves while extracting untold amounts of wealth and causing unprecedented harm to our environment. Every single tech bro in Silicon Valley, including Mark Zuckerberg, Bezos, and all those other fucks, think they are the superior human race. So their narcissism and God complex obviously does not hold up well to scrutiny.
You know it. Why did you continue to do this particular harmful practice when you knew it was causing harm?
App CEO Evan Spiegel was also set to testify until last week when his company settled. The trial comes as platforms come under increased scrutiny from families, school districts.
Oh, so instead of getting sued and go to court, they can just spend lots of money, which they have in spades, and then it not become a criminal thing.
And prosecutors.
There's a question about should these companies even exist, and I'm a fan of them. I think they do a lot of good. They definitely don't come for free. They cause harm as well.
It'll now be up to a jury to decide whether they're at fault for those harms.
Man. Well, let's see. What else do we got?
So we had some significant oral arguments at the Supreme Court over whether or not Trump can fire Lisa Cook, who is on the Fed Board of Governors. We can put actually this tear sheet up on the screen, which explains some of the backstory here. So it says the Supreme Court appears likely to allow Lisa Cook to remain on the Fed board. The Supreme Court on Wednesday appeared likely to block President Trump from immediately firing Democratic-appointed Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board, a move that would prevent Trump from exerting greater influence over the powerful central bank that guides the economy. Nearly all of the justices asked skeptical questions of Solicitor General D. John Sauer during roughly 2 hours of arguments, taking issue with most aspects of the government's case that the president had met the legal bar to remove Cook while a lawsuit challenging her removal plays out. Such agreement, they go on to say, is rare on high-profile cases at the deeply polarized court. And you guys may remember the backstory here. So the Trump administration was alleging there was some, like, mortgage application issue where she checked the wrong box and said a secondary home was really the primary residence. Apparently on other documents, it had been accurately portrayed as the secondary residence. This is a tactic they've used against multiple of their political adversaries. And they said that because they found this issue with this mortgage application, that gave them cause to be able to fire her, because due to, the way Congress set up the Fed, it says you have to have cause and provide notice before you fire any of.
That's literally like firing an employee because they stood up to your manager or the supervisor or the whatever, right? And then being like, this employee leaned for 30 seconds while on the clock, which means they weren't doing work, which means they were stealing time from the company, which means they could be fired. That's literally what that amounts to. And I know that for a fact because I have been fired from jobs for less. I literally have challenged employers multiple times on ethics, on legality. I have sued companies and won due to their ethics and their illegal wage practices, right? I have 100% gone toe-to-toe with big companies and employers, and I mostly have lost, to be fair. But the excuses they come up with, like, they just come up with excuses. You didn't dot an I on this request form, so you're trying to commit fraud against the company. We're going to fire you instead of pressing charges. Like, get fucked. Like, literally, get fucked. So, okay. What's this?
So we're starting to see cracks in the foundation of MAGA's support for some of these mass deportations from people in that world or adjacent to it, whether we got Tim Dillon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Dave Smith and some others who'll go through some of these. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I have to check myself because I'm constantly seeing things from Marjorie Taylor Greene that I don't just like not disagree with, but I'm like, that was extremely well said. Where is this coming from?
There's a meme. We're calling it "Strange New Respect" for Marjorie Greene.
Strange New Respect, banger after banger. And so here is now former Congresswoman, and she asks people to go through an exercise, a mental exercise, to try to figure out how they would feel if the pictures were reversed. She says, MAGA, consider it like this. We lost our minds when we watched Biden's FBI track down, sorry, jumped around a little bit there. But basically she's saying, imagine if Biden's FBI, which was rounding up people who participated in January 6th, imagine if you have conservative, either protesters or independent media figures who are outside the home of somebody where the Biden's FBI is like smashing the door in, and they're filming what they see is tyrannical overreach from Biden's DOJ. Biden's FBI agents then throw two women down onto the ground for no discernible reason whatsoever, just because they're filming and the agents can do it. The MAGA guy who's filming then gets in between the two women and the FBI agent. FBI agent then bear sprays all of them, throws them to the ground, and within a matter of seconds has shot the MAGA guy in the back repeatedly, then steps back and empties the clip into him. And then instead of providing, and I'll add this, instead of providing medical care, they start go counting bullet holes that they put into the MAGA person. She's like, try to put yourself in that position. And then once you have an ethical foundation, then respond how you would politically. Where
You know what? It's like he said. I am, well, actually, I don't remember what he said, but it was agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. That also, ladies and gentlemen, that right there, that story of, imagine if this was Biden's FBI and Biden's FBI threw people to the ground and then immediately opened fire into the back of your fellow MAGA patriot, right? With the red hat and everything. How would that make you feel? Ladies and gentlemen, that is moral phrasing. moral framing with the either which way, right? They literally took a thing that the left is justifiably outraged about, a state agency murdering a person in cold blood and in broad daylight. The fact that that person was an American, a white male American, and a white male veteran American on top of all of that just makes the point that much important that they will kill anyone. If they will kill the most privileged class in America, aside from wealthy, then they're going to kill everybody, right? But that doesn't resonate with MAGA, because MAGA apparently just would rather watch stormtroopers kick people's heads in, right? But if you frame the stormtrooper kicking people's heads in, which is great, and instead realize that what if it was a Democrat stormtrooper kicking in one of your friends' heads, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that's not cool. Correct. Just like universal health care is what we need. Just like we need better roads and bridges and trains and everything else under the sun. Right? Climate change is a thing that's impacting us. You want to know why we got 8 billion tons of snow this past fucking weekend? Because of climate change. Because the polar ice caps are melting and the Arctic wind flow is no longer contained. All I'm saying is, for better or for worse, Marjorie Taylor Greene accurately and correctly appealed to her base, the most extreme right-wing conservatives possible, and was able to reach them about the atrocities that are being committed in our country by our government, the tyranny that they have been training for to overcome and fight against their entire life. The reason why they love this thing. Mind, this is a cosplay prop. You are not allowed to brandish weapons on Twitch. This is a cosplay prop. They did at college protests, and I was kicked out a place where Tim Walz was at for holding up a banner. Right, no, that's the thing. Democrats do target protesters. But even when Democrats target protesters, Republicans find it hilarious, right? But the outrage is that most protesters don't end up getting killed by state agents, right? And certainly not for protesting against their number one guy. So, but to your point, it's outrageous regardless, but the context is different. So in your case, you would have to say, imagine if the governor of Texas just kicked you out for having exercised your American right to protest the governor of Texas, and he told you what for. How'd you feel about that? See? Moral phrasing.
Where is MTG now? I see the Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, has she hit him too many times to still be able to pack a punch? Or is the fact that she's standing up on principle allowing her to maintain some of that credibility? Because it's...
I don't know Marjorie's game. I really have no idea. She's rich. She's got a fiance. I think she's probably just going to live a good life in Georgia, and she'll keep posting through it. I'm not really sure if she has any bigger ambitions. It'd be interesting to see if she did. The important point beyond it is to give, look, this is kind of the point of this block. There needs to be a permission structure for people who are like, I'm not liberal, but I'm really, really upset, about this. That is the gateway, I think, for Marjorie Taylor Greene and for a few others, that we're about to cover. And I think that's actually the most important part of watching this, is to see the fissures start to break, and to also see some juxtapositioning and positioning for where things may end up. Our producer Griffin thinks that this is the most important one, so we're going to put this one up here on the screen, E3. And I've been thinking about it. I think he might be right. Let's put E3, Megyn Kelly's tweet, up here. She says, real Donald Trump should pull ICE out of Minnesota and announce that there will be no more immigration enforcement in Minnesota at all. All illegals in the U.S. are encouraged to move there. If any illegal is found outside of Minnesota gets deported, they can never apply for reentry. Moreover, every single asylum seeker should be told no application will be considered unless the person is living in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So basically doing the equivalent of Texas and all of them busing illegals to blue states. One of the most brilliant political moves that the Republicans pulled throughout the Biden years because it created immigration chaos across the nation. And it made it a salient issue and kind of spread and showed and highlighted what was going on. This is the solution that I see has the most likelihood of happening because it's a sneaky way of saying, okay, we're done. We give up. Right. We clearly lost. Let's pivot to this type of situation. And I've seen it now echoed by Katie Pavlich, another conservative commentator. I really think that these are sneaky ways for them to try to declare victory. And this is a very Trumpian way to try and do it while trying to accomplish your point of, drawing attention to sanctuary city while at the same time tacitly having to admit this shit is not working and it's a disaster.
Right. This is the you can't fire me because I quit move. And it's perfect. It's like, oh, you want to be a hellhole? Fine. We're too good. We're too good for you anyway. Like we were just trying to help, but clearly you don't want our help. And so you don't deserve our help. And so, we have open borders within the United States. So I don't exactly know how they would enforce this policy. Like you said, if you say you have to live in Minnesota, like there's an open border between
it's a no-go zone.
Minnesota and its surrounding states. Right. You can just drive right across it. I don't know if anybody's ever driven around the United States. We have open borders. Drive from Maryland right into Pennsylvania. No border. No border guards.
Yeah. But see, he brings that up in a cheeky way. There's no borders in America, except that is a thing that could very well be instituted. Like, this regime has literally violated every single tenet of the Constitution. Has committed war crimes by invading a foreign country and kidnapping their head of state, right? They are currently committing acts of terrorism and invading cities all across the country, from coast to coast. Currently in Ohio, California, Illinois, Maine. They're entering into Philadelphia, God rest their souls. They're entering into Florida, God rest their souls as well, because have you not watched any of the Florida Man videos? They don't give a fuck. I'm just saying, to institute border enforcement between states, even though that's also prohibited by the Constitution, would be par for the course. I remember during the Dem convention at 2016, the Bernie delegates could get kicked out of the convention center simply for having any sign that wasn't provided by the DNC. That's why I only attended the first 2 days. After that, I just attended to the protests around the convention. I even spoke at some of the events as a Bernie delegate who was basically defecting. Right? Democrats are also very authoritarian bastards. So, I think the rest of this video is just really good commentary, but there are still a lot of things to discuss. Like this.
Funding for the federal government runs out on Friday, and the killing in Minneapolis has shaken up what looked to be a glide path to likely avoiding a shutdown into what is now a wall that the Senate is going to crash into. We can put up this first element from Chuck Schumer. So Chuck Schumer has met with his Senate colleagues, and in the wake of the killing of Alex Pretty, rank-and-file Democrats have been livid and saying that they're drawing a red line here, that they have no intention of supporting government funding if it includes money for the DHS. And so, Sagar, what's going on here? So last week, the House passed a bunch of different spending packages and then left. So credit to Speaker Mike Johnson, we could say. I think this is one of the first times that the House has actually passed the normal appropriations bills, the way you're supposed to do it in like decades practically. Like
Right.
Congress has like been completely broken. They put it together, and Democrats did this too clever by half move. This is before the killing. I think it was a Thursday night that it passed through the House. What they did is they gave Democratic support for these Republican measures that were not related to DHS, and it allowed Republicans to then separate out the DHS spending package. Democrats then, all except for like 6 of them or so, voted against that. But leadership knew that the strategy that the two parties were taking was going to move federal money for all agencies through. But it allowed Democrats not to have their fingerprints on the ICE money. So that's kind of where the politics were leading up to Thursday. The Democrats...
How is that a fucking genius move? The Democrats already shut down the government for 40 some odd days and got nothing to show for it. And now they're like, we're going to play 3D chess. We're going to pass the spending bill for everything except for DHS. We're going to give Trump everything he asked for except for DHS. It's so stellar, they'll never see it coming. Are you fucking kidding me? So, defunding Medicare, defunding schools, defunding our infrastructure, a $1.5 trillion military budget, like... You passed all of these egregious things, but you think it was like 10-dimensional chess because you didn't pay for DHS. Hats off, I guess. Okay. Oh, and there's a whole video on that too. Go figure. Oh.
We are learning more about instances of violent clashes between federal agents and protesters in the aftermath of Saturday's deadly shooting. New affidavits show 2 women are now being charged with assault on a federal officer after allegedly biting 2 agents on Saturday.
This comes after DHS spokesperson...
I mean, remember when I said that you're going to push people too far? I mean, biting somebody's finger off. Remember how when you were in school, I forget what grade it was. Maybe it was like the 4th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, whatever it was. But, like, the reason why you can't bite your finger off is because your brain literally stops you from doing so. Your brain, and look, I mean, that's a pretty deep mark right there, right? You can actually bite off your finger with the same level of difficulty as biting off a carrot. Like, I could bite the cigar right off. And it probably has the same, well, maybe not the same, right? But, like, I could bite this pen right off. I'm not going to see, ow, that kind of hurt my tooth. But your body, the pain stops you from doing that, but you are physically capable of doing it. So, literally biting somebody else's finger off, there is no brain trigger to say, ow, that hurts, you should stop doing that. It's somebody else's finger. Chomp, chomp, motherfucker. Do you guys remember the video, Charlie bit my finger? Yes. Ouch, Charlie bit me. He's not losing his finger, and the bite wasn't even that bad. I don't know. There were some pictures where a dude actually had his finger bitten off. So, I don't know. Maybe some pictures are of just getting bitten and the other is getting bitten off, but, you know.
Tricia McLaughlin posted about a similar incident amidst the fallout from Pretty's death. NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach joins us now from our D.C. bureau. Gary, what else do we know about the alleged assault?
Yeah, so both of these incidents happened separately, but around the same time, right after the federal...
So it wasn't 2 ladies that were best friends, like, we're going to bite these motherfuckers. 2 women separated by time and distance literally had the same idea. They shared the same neutron for a second and was like, you know what? I'm biting this motherfucker, and god damn it if they did.
Law enforcement was trying to create a perimeter on the street right after Alex Pretty's shooting. And what happened here was that one of the individuals was being arrested by federal agents, and her hands were on the ground right in front of her face. And when they tried to take her hand to arrest her behind her back, she bit the officer's finger so hard that part of the finger, actually, the tip of the finger, actually came off. The individual, the victim here, a federal agent, said he didn't realize that it was so cold outside he didn't realize his finger had actually come off until 45 minutes later, and that's when he sought medical attention. Another incident was less serious, but another serious biting incident. These individuals, because of what they're charged with here, a federal officer, could face 8 years in prison. Right now, they have been released by a federal judge as they await a next court hearing here, but they could face some serious time behind bars.
You know what's great about the fact that they could face federal time for biting a federal officer and biting their fucking finger off is that they can be presidentially pardoned. Ronan, 2028. I will pardon the badass ladies who bit off the fingers of ICE. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so all of this really is, wait, nope. I guess this made the news.
The rapper formerly known as Kanye is apologizing today for, in his words, reckless behavior. He took out this full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal, Ye did, titled, "To Those I've Hurt," going on to say he is not a Nazi or an anti-Semite and that he loves Jewish people. You probably remember over the last couple of years, Ye said a lot of anti-Semitic things, a lot of racist things. At one point, he sold T-shirts with swastikas on them. He had previously apologized for his anti-Semitism, then took that apology back before this apology now. And in this ad, he says his behavior stems from an undiagnosed brain injury caused by a car crash he was in 25 years ago. We should note the timing of this here, just a few days before his 12th album is set to drop. Chloe Malas.
Hey guys, I got into a car accident 25 years ago, and for the past 3 years I decided to be a Nazi. But also, I'm sorry about that, and here's my new fucking album. Please buy it. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is clearly trying to sanitize his record so he can make millions of dollars off of this fucking record. Un-goddamn believable.
Is covering this one for us. I think some of the reaction has been interesting to this too, including from the Anti-Defamation League and from others as well.
You know, Hallie, it's complicated. I have covered Kanye West for 17 years, and when I was at CNN, I did, a really in-depth report at the time that Kanye had planned to name an album of his Hitler. I think that a lot of people are struggling with this public open letter, this apology coming from Kanye West, because, like you pointed out, Hallie, he has apologized in the past. And in this, he writes, to those I've hurt, he says, bipolar disorder comes with its own defensive system. Denial. When you're manic, you don't think you're sick. Everyone else is overreacting. But I will say that Kanye West, now Ye, he has said multiple times very publicly that he does not suffer from bipolar disorder. He's actually said that he suffers from autism, or that he has autism, that he has other issues, but that this was not one of them. So he was very public about saying that he did not suffer from bipolar disorder. And now he's saying, a few days before his new album is coming out, that he is not a Nazi, that he loves the Jewish people. And it makes you wonder, is he being sincere? It's all come down to him wanting to sell albums, Hallie.
Yeah, Chloe, and the ADL saying to the New York Times that the truest apology would be for him to not engage in anti-Semitic behavior in the future. Chloe Malas, lots to watch on that front. Thank you very much for bringing us that context.
Which, we've I don't even know. I'm autistic. I'm somewhere on the autistic spectrum, right? Like, I'm definitely somewhere on the autistic spectrum. And maybe I've even had meltdowns, right? Fits of rage or uncontrollable emotional outbursts, right? And not one fucking time in my 36 years on this earth, despite my rage, despite my emotional overwhelming whatever, did I ever, at any point in time, decide to go full Hitler, or go see Kyle or any of that nonsense. Not once did any of my mental health crises result in me being an anti-Semitic piece of garbage. So the fact that Musk and Trump and Yi and God knows how many others are using mental health and autism or whatever to justify their racism, their anti-Semitism, and every other bigotry that they can come up with is not just grossly insulting to real autistic people and real people with bipolar and whatever else, but it is grossly insulting to our intelligence. You think you can just be a horrible person, say, oh, got into a car accident and I have mental health problems, forgive me, and then move on like nothing happened? No, absolutely fucking not. Oh, and this one.
ICE agents are reportedly slated to be used as security officers during next month's Milan Cortina Winter Olympic Games.
So, that's pretty quiet. I don't know why. ICE agents, the Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement for America, is being deployed to Italy for the Winter Olympics. What fucking jurisdiction does ICE have on any country whatsoever? And completely disregarding the fact that they're domestic terrorists in our own country. But if you were going to send an American agency to a foreign country, even under the auspices of security, the FBI would actually be the one that you use. Because obviously the CIA is too busy, causing regime change. Maybe even U.S. Marshals. Maybe. But it would definitely not be immigration. Because what fucking jurisdiction does U.S. immigration have in a foreign fucking country? Are you serious right now? That would be like Hitler sending the SS to another country to round up Jews that they have no anything there to do with. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And let's not forget all of the anti-black shit, like blaming black people for slavery, calling it a choice. Oh, yeah, that's right. He did do all that shit, too. Sure, Italy's PM is a fascist like Trump, but even she would have to admit that that's crossing the line. Like, if she used her own ICE agents, sure, her own fascisti, that would make sense, but are we exporting fascism now? Is that what we're doing?
However, the Italian city's mayor said the group is not welcome as the agency is under fire for the killing of 2 people in Minneapolis. According to the Associated Press, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, quote, would support diplomatic security details and would not run any immigration enforcement operations at the Olympics. ICE said,
right. Because how the fuck would they initiate any immigration enforcement operations in a fucking foreign country? Are you kidding me? What? The mayor should literally deport the ICE agents back to America. As soon as they arrive, they should be arrested by Italian police and deported back to America. That would be fucking hilarious. Yeah, she's allowing it. Is she allowing it to happen, though? I mean, I don't know. You're the one that puts these lists together, and I react to them in real time for authenticity. But, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that the PM would actually allow this to go forward if there's going to be this much backlash.
said in a statement that AFP security operations for the Olympics would, quote, remain under Italian authority. ICE officers will be used as security for Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who will attend the opening ceremonies to lead the American delegation.
So that's Border Patrol, not even ICE. But it seems as though ICE is being treated as the executive branch's personal military, paramilitary, if you will. Yeah, why would they, again, isn't that exactly why Secret Service was founded and exists? So, the only reasonable and logical conclusion that can be drawn from this is that ICE is being used as a paramilitary force for the executive branch. Which, I mean, that's ludicrously illegal, but, you know. Also, I can't help but point out, none of those black helmets are ballistics rated, and that green helmet is probably maybe level 2, maybe level 3. Because if they were issued, they would be level 3A. They wouldn't be level 4. If they were issued, one, they'd be mandatory to be worn by everybody, and I'm fairly certain they'd be level 3A because that would be rifle rounds. No. I'm thinking of 3. Level 3, because it goes 3A, then 3. That would be rifle rounds. And the fact that that guy's wearing it himself means he paid out of pocket. And we did a cursory look. I mean, those helmets are like $1,700 for the lowest rating, let alone thousands of dollars for level 4. So, and it's just a brain bucket. It just covers the top of the skull, which if you get shot here, which, hold on. Yeah. So the helmet covers here. Guess what? If you still get shot right there, you're still fucking dead. So, that kind of partial cover is, that is definitely a personal effect. And that's even crazier because you're bringing your own personal body armor to work. That's also true. The Secret Service is an elite agents. They are very elite service agents. ICE is any Tom, Dick, and Harry with racial and insecurity problems, mommy and daddy issues that they want to take out on others. But again, if you're using them as a paramilitary force, well, then that makes sense. If they will obey any order you give them with impunity, and you will protect them, well, if you're a fascist, you can't ask for anything better. That's the perfect soldier. Yeah, ICE is more violent. I would not want ICE as security if I was JD or Mark. But hey, maybe it's for the best. They won't be well protected and we may get lucky. I mean, not that I'm advocating for violence. But whatever happens.
The AP reports security at the Olympics has previously come through ICE's Homeland Security Investigations Agency, which, quote, investigates crime on a global scale. Milan Mayor Giuseppe Sala rejected ICE's presence, referring to the U.S. agency as a, quote, militia that kills, end quote, in an interview with RTL Radio, saying they are a, quote, militia that enters into the homes of people, signing their own permission slips. It is clear they are not welcome in Milan, without a doubt. Sala told the radio station, quote, can we say no to Trump just this once? ICE officers shouldn't come to Italy because they are not aligned with our democratic way of managing security. ICE is...
We don't want to bring ICE because they're not democratic. In the land of the free, home of the brave, land of democratic opportunity.
His inclusion at the Olympics is also not welcomed by Alessandro Zan, a left-wing member of the European Parliament, who said in a post on X, quote, in Italy, we don't want those who trample human rights and act outside any democratic control. It's unacceptable to think that an agency of this kind could have a role, whatever it may be, in our country. Growing backlash follows the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy by a Border Patrol officer in Minneapolis last weekend, the second federal agent-involved death this month after Renee Good's January 7th death. This has fueled calls for ICE's removal, leading to Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino's anticipated departure from overseeing operations in Minnesota. For more on the story, check out the article at the link in the description.
So, more unobjective reporting by legitimate news sources. ICE is going to be in Italy, of which they have no authority or mandate to be in a foreign country. And Italian leadership is saying, fuck off, because they are an undemocratic militia. And we're just going to leave it at that, I guess. And that's in Italy, where the PM is an avowed fascist. The U.S. is too fascist for fascist Italy. So wait a second. The Italian PM is actually labeling herself as a fascist, and people are just in Italy going, are you serious? Because if that's the case, I don't care how old the video is, I want that on tomorrow's stream. Because that's insane. Oh my God, Elon Musk. What else do we got? What's our final video here?
This is the visual that defines a collapsing presidency. If you walk past 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue this morning, you won't see the stately symbol of American democracy.
I love this for her, by the way. Dr. Laura M. Whitfield, MD, Senior Health, has 29,400-ish subscribers. And this video has 486,000 views in just 23 hours. So, I think she struck a nerve.
You will see a disaster zone. You will see a massive mud-filled crater where the historic East Wing used to stand. You will see silent yellow cranes towering over the executive mansion.
Why does she have the Jazz Age fiction on her bookshelf multiple times over? Is that a AI generated background? I'm gonna get really distracted here, but yeah.
Like vultures. And for the first time in 6 months, you will hear something terrifyingly quiet. Silence. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Monday, January 26th, 2026, all construction on President Trump's controversial $400 million grand ballroom has been ordered to an immediate, indefinite halt. The ballroom from hell, as preservationists have called it, is dead in the water. A federal judge, an appointee of Ronald Reagan, no less, has just issued a blistering 40-page injunction that doesn't just stop the work, it accuses the administration of willful deception, statutory vandalism, and gross fiscal negligence. President Trump, already reeling from the Davos disaster, the Japan bond crash, and the seizure of his New York properties, has just been blindsided in his own backyard. He woke up this morning expecting to see concrete being poured for his monument. Instead, he woke up to a federal marshal taping a cease and desist order to the White House construction fence. The official reason? The money is gone. The private donations that were supposed to fund this massive vanity project have evaporated in the wake of the Japan financial crisis. And without the cash, the judge has ruled that the President of the United States is effectively squatting on public land, destroying national heritage with an unfunded mandate. In this deep dive special report, we are going to walk you through the stunning court order that just dropped. We are going to show you how the East Wing demolition has turned into a political suicide pact. We are going to expose the phantom donors who fled the moment the markets cracked. And we are going to explain why this stopped construction site is the perfect metaphor for a second term that has completely run out of road. The king wanted a castle. He ended up with a hole in the ground. To understand the severity of this ruling and why Washington is in a state of absolute shock this morning, we have to rewind to late 2025. Fresh off his inauguration,
I don't know when You beeped it before or right after I unmuted it. That was so mean. Okay, hold on. You were writing a bunch of stuff too. Giorgia Meloni. Born in 1977, a politician, prime minister, hold the office, president, Brothers of Italy, since 2014 was president. Joined the Youth Front. Geez, these are all very Nazi-sounding fucking groups here. She later became the national leader of Student Action, the student movement of the National Alliance. Oh my fucking god, can these sound less fascist? A post-fascist party that became the MSI's legal successor in 1995 and moved toward national conservation. She was a councilor of the province of Rome. Afterwards, she became the president of Youth. Damn. She's the Italian equivalent of the AFD and has been a part of the Hitler Youth, or the Italian fascist youth program since a very young age. Okay. Anywho, this lady right here gave the most scathing report and feedback on Trump's vanity project and rightfully pointed out that it is going to be a giant hole in the ground for the time being because it's an indefinite hold, which, granted, it should have been stopped to begin with. So, again, I hope there's going to be fines and repercussions for the companies that came and demoed the buildings. That being said, the fact that the money disappeared and that the money was donations to build the ballroom and the money has now disappeared from the ballroom kind of makes it imply that he just stole money from the federal government and pocketed it, which is embezzlement. If I'm not mistaken, I believe embezzlement is the correct legal term for that crime. So, like, why is none of that triggering investigations? Which maybe it is. I don't know. Because we don't have 30 minutes to watch this. But I just find it very interesting that, and apparently he's had buildings seized and properties seized. Like, where's those videos? Thursday is going to be pretty fucking lit because we're going to find those videos and we're going to cover the Trump empire crumbling to dust in real time. Which brings us to the end of the stream. Thank you all for watching. This has been Samuel Ronan, your future president, current candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in Ohio's 15th District. Today was Taco Tuesdays, the day in which we talk about U.S. policy, politics, and news. Tomorrow is going to be Worldwide Wednesdays when we talk about foreign policy and news. And then Thursdays are our recaps when we talk about anything that may have transpired that we didn't get to cover, or anything new that may have transpired that is just, well, yeah, breaking news, right? So there is a lot to come. This week is sure to be filled with as much intensity and dystopian nightmares as the weeks before, but it looks like there are cracks in the fascist regime known as this administration. So with that being said, I hope everyone has a great night. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and our social media. Spread the word. Talk to your friends, family, neighbors, teachers, peers in either capacity, and let's build this platform. So on that note, have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Samuel Ronan, out.